Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands that her husband eats more food. Am I the jerk for refusing to eat all of my wife's food? So I, 37 male, and my wife, who's 35, are cooling down from an argument right now based around me telling her, point blank, to make less food in the future or I'm going to continue not eating it. The backstory is pretty simple and nothing to the point of threatening our marriage or anything. I'm getting up in years as a basketball player and these knees are starting to go. I had eventually reached around 196 pounds at 5'9" around the tail end of lockdown. I knew I had to make a change and at least get down to my pre-lockdown weight of around 163 pounds. Now I'm actually all the way down to 70 kilograms right now. I'm happy with my progress and I'm set on making this my new normal moving forward into old age and beyond. But my wife isn't exactly thrilled I've lost all this weight. There aren't love handles for her to play with anymore. Most devastating for her is that I don't eat nearly as much as I used to. We trade off cooking duties every day, and when it's my turn, I usually make just enough. But when she cooks, there's always enough food for another full plate. My wife is tiny, so she can't eat it, and I'm now a guy who doesn't eat it either. I always suggest that we save it and have it for dinner the next day. I don't eat breakfast, and lunches are provided by my work. And while that worked for a while, eventually the leftovers just ended up in the bin, and she'd ask me to cook something new instead. Although it's been fine more or less, she doesn't hold back on commenting. To her, men should be eating seconds or thirds. It's just the Japanese way to her. She's Japanese and we live in the country. And she always recalls her father enthusiastically asking for seconds and thirds. She's feeling more and more ashamed that her husband doesn't like her cooking. But I do. Her cooking is fantastic, and I eat as much as I can when she makes it. It's just that she makes too much now. We've had talks about her portion sizes, but it always circles back to letting her cook her way. This all boiled over earlier tonight when she asked if I wanted a second serving of a delicious fried chicken, and I said, "No, I'm way too full." She responded, "Are you just going to throw away all this chicken then? That's so wasteful." I knew immediately I was giving the wrong response, but I still said it. "You are wasting all this chicken. I told you to make less food. I've been telling you for months. I don't see you eating the chicken either. You're the one wasting money and time making all this extra food that I won't eat, and that's not going to change." Now she's in bed after a cry, and nothing from me gave her any comfort. I'm downstairs writing this. I know my response was wrong in that moment, but have I been a jerk about this entire weight loss journey, or at least as it pertains to my wife's cooking? Should I have just sucked it up and eaten all of her food? Not the jerk. You've spoken up about this plenty. At this point, she should need to eat any leftovers that she produces. Hopefully this isn't the case, but she may be subconsciously sabotaging your weight loss. Not the jerk. It's an Asian thing. Food equals love. I'm Chinese and my mom always overcooked, and then would comment on all of our weights. It took over 20 years and all the kids moving out for her to finally cook less, or at least just enough that everyone's finished with no leftovers when we visit her. Just tell your wife you don't view food the same way. Food is sustenance, and overeating is a bad habit. At your age, excess weight leads to health problems, and if she loves you, she wouldn't want that for you. Just keep repeating that while reassuring her that you still love her even if you want to eat less of what she makes. Am I the jerk for not telling my ex-wife that we lived in a rental apartment? Back in 2008, when I started university, I rented a 2-bedroom apartment with my ex-girlfriend at the time, along with my friend and his girlfriend. We got a great deal on it because the owner of the place lost her job due to the economic situation back then and decided to try her luck abroad where she still lives. Years went by, and after university, my friend and his girlfriend decided to find a place of their own. Since we had full-time jobs, renting this apartment together didn't seem expensive anymore. It also didn't seem costly to rent alone after we broke up sometime later. So there I was, alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the central part of the city. The owner decided she was too lazy to deal with bills and stuff every month, so she made arrangements for me to pay everything directly. Since I had earned her trust, I still pay her monthly rent, which is very cheap by today's standards, and I handle everything else with her authorization. Because of the perfect location, my second bedroom was basically a free B&B for my friends who didn't live in the city, and I didn't mind. It's good to have company when you live alone. In 2020, I met a girl who was in a rush to get married, and since I was madly in love, we tied the knot in 2021. For some reason, I never told her the story of how I rented the place or that it was a rental at all. It just never came up. I had gotten so used to the fact that I'm an authorized representative with the building cooperative, etc., that I refer to it as my place. As time went on, our relationship started to cool down, and we realized we weren't perfect for each other after all. So, divorce it is. We completed the paperwork and she's moving out. A few days ago, I received an email from her with a real estate valuation document attached. While I wasn't at home, she spent 500 euros for someone to evaluate an apartment that doesn't belong to us and wrote that I'd probably have to take out a loan to pay her 50% of the value. I replied to her, "Didn't I ever tell you that this place is a rental? Why would you even assume I can afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the city center? You know where I work and how much I earn." She called me and screamed that I had lied to her for years by hiding the fact that the apartment was a rental. Then she said, "Well, I'll take the car since we got that together." It was quiet for a moment, and then I told her, "You do know that's a lease, right? The owner of the car is the bank." Then she demanded that I pay for the valuation, to which I replied, "I didn't ask you to do it." She called me a jerk and ended the call. Of course, she told our whole group of friends how I lied to her throughout the entire marriage. There was a discussion in the group chat about whether it was a lie or not and whether I was being a jerk. Some friends agreed with me while others sided with her. My best friend told me that this would be a perfect topic for a Reddit thread. So now I ask you, Reddit, am I the jerk? It's odd you didn't tell her, but also odd that it wasn't part of your conversation about life and who was paying for things and how and so on. Not the jerk. OP. She did cover about 50% of the utility bills as she wanted to contribute, and it was no secret that I had been living there for a very long time. I just never spelt it out that this is a rental. I think she assumed I owned it because we did some maintenance there together that you normally don't do in a rental, changed the wallpaper in the living room, and got a few appliances when old ones broke down. Not the jerk. I wonder why she was in such a rush to get married. Was her plan all along to get married and then take you for half of everything after a couple of years? Not the jerk. Why would she be entitled to half even if you did own it? OP. In some countries, you share everything you own even if you had them before marriage. It's unfortunate, but you hear about it all the time. Am I the jerk for telling my sister I don't know if I love her after finding out about her 5-year affair? My sister, who's 32, moved in with me 5 months ago because she got pregnant from what she said was a one-time thing. I love my sister, so of course I let her stay. With my husband overseas for 6 more months, it was actually nice to have her around, as I care about her deeply. On Monday, I came home to find my sister and an unfamiliar woman in a screaming match on my doorstep. I had no idea what was happening, but I saw the woman poking my pregnant sister's shoulder, so I stepped in. I sent my sister inside, and she begged me to get rid of the woman. Confused, but wanting to defuse the situation, I asked the woman to leave. That's when the woman started yelling, asking if I was also sleeping with her husband. I was completely baffled. She then revealed that my sister had been having an affair with her husband for 5 years. She had everything, printed chats, photos, emails, receipts. It was all overwhelming, and I didn't want to go through it, but some key facts came out. My sister knew the man was married and had been his mistress for 5 years. This woman was a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids, one of whom has a severe disability. Her husband knew about my sister's pregnancy and had even taken my sister on a baby moon to celebrate. Despite his repeated lies about leaving his wife, my sister was emotionally invested and believed he eventually would. I apologized to the woman, explained that I didn't know anything about the affair, and asked her to leave to avoid the situation escalating further. Before leaving, she gave me her number and pleaded with me not to let her husband stay at my house. I promised her no man would be stepping foot in my home. Inside, my sister begged me not to believe the woman, calling her a vindictive ex-wife. I told her we could look up the marriage records to see if a divorce had been filed. We ended up having a huge fight. My sister kept insisting that I wouldn't understand because they loved each other, but he just couldn't leave his wife. I told her she was being foolish and naive. The next day, I told her she could stay because I didn't want her to become a financial burden on the other woman, but I also said I didn't want to engage with her for now. When she asked if I still loved her, I replied, "Right now, I can't say I do. I will always help my nephew and won't endanger you, but I don't like you right now. You've shown me you're not trustworthy." I explained that I no longer trusted her around my husband or anything else, and I made her sign a tenants agreement. She has been begging for forgiveness, but I told her there's nothing to forgive. I just don't know who she is anymore. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister's actions were incredibly hurtful and harmful. It's understandable that you need time to process this and decide whether you can rebuild trust with her. I've been where that poor wife is. It's the worst feeling in the world. Years later, I still wonder how that chick was so naive and careless. We weren't friends, but she knew of me, and she believed his lies that we were unhappy and were separating. They always believe the lies and believe they're the special one he will be with forever. Well, I kicked him out, and they lasted a few months before he was calling, telling me she was crazy. Surprise, surprise, that's one of the lies he told her about me, and also told me about literally every one of his exes. So yeah, giant shock. Not the jerk. Your sister is just another sad, delusional homewrecker. I'm sorry you have to live with that knowledge now. Keep her away from your husband. Edit. Even if you trust your husband completely, don't put him in that position to have to defend himself and fend her off if something happens. Y'all are so dramatic. Okay, so your sister hooked up with another woman's husband. Who's really the jerk in this situation? 1000% the husband. Is your sister a jerk? Yeah, but like only to a fraction of the degree of the husband. So she's your sister. She did something stupid. She hurt other people. So you don't love her anymore? Like, she was just someone's affair. It's not a victimless crime, but it's also not your sister's sole responsibility or even her at main fault. So you don't love her? Your sister is in an emotionally difficult situation to the nth degree, and when you found out, you immediately sided against her for a stranger, to the point you told your family you don't love them anymore. This is obviously crappy behavior, and anyone posting not the jerk is obviously lacking critical thinking skills. Would I be the jerk if I broke up with my fiance so he could be happier with my sister? I, 25 female, have been engaged to my fiance, 28 male, for about a month now. He's honestly amazing. He's kind, thoughtful, successful, and way out of my league. I love him so much, but lately I've been thinking that maybe I'm not the right person for him, and maybe my sister, Tara, who's 27, would be better for him. Tara is everything that I'm not. She's beautiful, smart, outgoing, and honestly, the type of woman that turns heads wherever she goes. She's always been the favorite in our family. My parents adore her, and she's always making them proud. Ever since my fiance came into the picture, it's like my family has started hinting that they think he'd be happier with her. When I first introduced him to my family, they couldn't stop talking about how perfect he is. At first, I thought it was just normal family excitement, but it's gotten kind of weird. My mom constantly makes comments like, "Tara and your fiance just have so much in common." And my dad has said things like, "It's a shame Tara didn't meet someone like him sooner. They'd make a power couple." At family gatherings, Tara and my fiance seem to get along really well, and everyone keeps pointing it out. My aunt actually said, "If your sister ever decides she's ready for a serious relationship, she'd be lucky to find a guy like him," while staring directly at them as they talked. I laughed it off because what else could I do? I know Tara is incredible, and honestly, I'm just not sure I'm the right person for him. Tara's also been spending a lot of time with him, and my family keeps encouraging it. She'll ask him to help with things like fixing her computer or moving furniture, and when I offer to come, she says, "No, it's fine, I just need him for a quick favor." They have been spending time at the gym and attending similar events due to having similar jobs. My mom always says how nice it is that they're bonding, and my dad once joked, "Maybe you're just holding him back, sweetheart. Tara's more on his level." I know they mean well, but it's really starting to mess with my head. My fiance loves me, and I know he does, but I can't help but think that maybe he'd be happier with someone like Tara. They're both so similar, and I feel like I'm just not good enough. I'm not as confident or as outgoing as her, and I think my family sees that too. At our last family dinner, Tara made a comment about how my fiance is the perfect guy, and how any woman would be lucky to have him. My dad actually laughed and said, "Well, there's still time for that," which made everyone awkwardly laugh, even my fiance. I felt sick. I've been thinking, maybe it would be better for everyone if I just stepped aside. I don't want to hold him back from being with someone who's actually his equal. My family already seems to think they're better suited for each other, and honestly, I feel like I'm the odd one out in my own relationship. I love him so much, but what if he's just settling for me? Would I be the jerk for breaking up with him to make everyone else happy? I'm not asking about me and my feelings. I'm asking if it would be cruel to my fiance. Edit. I'm going to sit down with my fiance at noon for a discussion. I understand why this would make me a jerk to him, and I think he deserves the conversation. Update. I confronted my now ex-fiance. He was cheating with my sister, and my entire family knew. I'm done with this site for now. Thank you for your support. Dude, that update made my heart skip a beat. I wasn't expecting that. That sucks. Time to find a new job and accept any offer? Don't mind if I do. My former boss didn't realize that to actually make money, he had to show up for work. Instead, he came and went as he pleased, expecting me to pick up the slack and eventually play the roles of receptionist, paralegal, office manager, and attorney. I never gave legal advice, he just expected me to, and so did his clients. His friend, who was my divorce attorney, worked in the same building, so he'd pop in just to chat and see how things were going. He started noticing that my boss was absent more often than not and questioned how things were going. I began confiding in him, expressing concerns because I could see that my boss was spending more than he was making, and his clients were upset that they could never reach their attorney. Then my boss started doing some unethical and shady things to move cases along, and I became nervous about what would happen if he got caught and how it might affect me. I told my attorney, and he mentioned that his firm needed extra support staff, but didn't want to seem like he was purposely poaching me from his friend. He advised me to talk to my boss about the state of the office and see if there was a way to salvage things. I never got that chance. Later that day, my boss stormed into the office and told me I needed to start looking for a new job to take the first offer I got because he'd likely have to shut down within 90 days and he couldn't guarantee me a paycheck. The next day, I spoke with my attorney and he shrugged, suggesting I give my 2 weeks notice and call it a day. Later that same day, my boss came into the office and told me to hold off on finding a new job and to give him a month to turn things around. Sorry, but I have bills to pay. I wasn't going to sit around and wonder if I'd get a paycheck or not. I drafted my 2 weeks notice, only because my attorney friend asked as a professional courtesy for his friend, and gave it to my boss at the end of the pay period. Cue the surprised Pikachu look from my boss. "You're leaving? But why?" Per our conversation, you advised me to find other employment, so I did. "Where?" "Friend's law firm." "Seriously? When I make this business work, I'm going to want you back. Is that going to be a problem?" "Good luck." "What's he paying you?" "Less than you and half the hours, but at least I know his checks won't bounce." I heard from my replacement on his first solo day, I trained him during my last week, that my boss regretted telling me on a whim to leave because I was the only one who knew anything about his cases. Oh well, he shouldn't have left me to run his firm without help, knowing that I'm not an attorney or a licensed paralegal while he went on lavish vacations and ignored all of his clients. Even if he wanted me back, there's no way I'd return. I've already been bumped to full-time hours and received a raise in less than a month, with the promise of a second raise soon to match what I was making at my former boss's firm. Plus, I now get paid holidays, PTO, and sick leave. No way on God's green earth would I ever go back. Am I the jerk because I told my brother he couldn't afford to have kids? I'm 25 female, have always been financially independent, working hard to build my career. My brother, who's 30, has 2 kids who are 2 and 2, 2-year-old twins. And he and his wife have been struggling financially for years, probably because of their spending habits and lifestyle. They constantly ask our family for help, and while my parents enable this behavior, I've always kept my distance. A few weeks ago, my brother asked me for $3,000 to cover some bills, claiming that it was for the kids. He did not bother to elaborate on what expenses, so I told him that he and his wife should have thought about their financial situation before having kids. He exploded, calling me selfish and heartless, saying I don't understand because I don't have kids. This caused a huge fight in the family. My parents are upset with me for not supporting family, but I think it's ridiculous that I'm expected to bail out my brother every time he makes poor decisions. He chose to have kids, knowing full well they couldn't afford it. My mom says I should help for the sake of my niece and nephew, but I think it's not my responsibility to clean up their mess. Now the family is divided, and I'm being painted as the bad guy for refusing to help the kids. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're not a personal ATM for your brother's bad choices. Helping the kids is one thing, but bailing him out every time? That's just enabling. He needs to fix his habits, not keep asking you for cash. Not the jerk. That's a lot of money. If he was asking for $100 to buy the kids' school shoes, okay, I can see that. But $3,000? Tell him the last time you checked, your name wasn't Rockefeller. Update. I thought things couldn't get worse with my family, but boy was I wrong. After I refused to give my brother $3,000, my parents stepped in without telling me and took out a personal loan to help him get back on his feet. When I found out, I was furious. I knew this would only enable him, but what really upset me was how he spent the money. Turns out, only half of it went to bills. The rest? He bought a brand new TV, a sofa, and all sorts of appliance upgrades, all because the kids deserved something good growing up at home. When I confronted him, he had the audacity to say I didn't understand because I don't have kids, and that his kids deserve to feel normal, despite their financial struggles. He even called me bitter and jealous because I'm child-free, which is just ridiculous. What really blew my mind was that my mom backed him up, saying, "Everyone needs a little luxury sometimes," and told me that I was being too harsh. At this point, I was livid. I laid it out for them. This isn't about luxury, this is about basic responsibility. If you can't afford to pay rent or utilities, maybe new furniture or appliances shouldn't be your priority. My brother stormed out of the room, but then my dad stepped in, saying, "We're family, we take care of each other." I replied, "Family doesn't mean I have to bankroll his bad decisions." It didn't stop there. The next day, I started getting passive-aggressive texts from my brother's wife. She said I was a horrible aunt for refusing to help and accused me of turning my back on family. She even brought my job into it, saying I'm privileged because I have a stable high income and that I owe it to my niece and nephew to help since they don't get to live the same lifestyle. She ended the message with, "How can you sleep at night knowing my kids are suffering?" Suffering? They have more new gadgets than I do. Block your brother and his wife. Tell your parents that if they can afford to give your brother money, then they don't need your money and you will not bail them out in the future. Talk to a lawyer and write a will to make sure your money goes where you want it to go. This sounds like a classic case of blame the responsible one. It's not your responsibility to clean up after your brother's financial mess, and it's definitely not your job to fund his luxury purchases. Your brother and his wife need a reality check. Keep standing your ground and don't let them guilt trip you into enabling their irresponsible behavior. And yes, I can sleep just fine knowing I'm not footing the bill for their frivolous spending. My entitled roommate is pregnant and I don't want to live with her anymore. Me, female 22, and my best friend/roommate, female 23, just got a new place together in the beginning of December of 2021 and everything was going great. That was soon short-lived when she told me that she might be pregnant. After taking 3 tests, it was confirmed that she was pregnant. I asked her if she thought she was ready for a baby, and she said she had no choice since she does not believe in getting rid of it. She was very excited, and naturally I was happy, but extremely shocked because she's still very young, has not finished school, and her and the baby's father, male 46, are not together as he lives an hour and a half from where me and her stay now. After finding out she was pregnant, she quit her job, claiming that she's going to find a new one because she's too sick. 2 months later, and she still does not have a job and can barely pay her half of the rent. Her family pays the rent, car note, insurance, and just about anything else you can think of, even though they don't have it. Her father recently passed, so her mom pays my best friend's bills and the bills her father left behind when he passed. Her mom always tells her that she needs to get a job because she's always giving her last money to her daughter. But she is unfazed by these conversations as if she has nothing to worry about. I asked her what her plan was, and she says she plans to stay in this apartment with me and the baby while working and doing school at the same time. Her family lives far, and so I asked her what she planned to do for childcare, and she said she refuses to let anyone watch her kid and she won't do daycare until he or she is able to talk. After really contemplating on whether I wanted to live with a baby or not, I decided that it might not be the best thing for me. One day she was on the phone with her mother, telling her that she wanted her kid to be in a private school. Her mom said that she was going to have to pay for it herself because her mother was not going to pay it. My friend's response was that her mom didn't have to worry about it because myself and her will be taking care of the tuition for the baby. I was very taken aback by this because I did not agree to this or anything to do with the baby. I feel like if I stay, I'm going to put myself in a terrible situation. I'm still a student at university and I am in my pre-medicine program. This is very important to me as I want to become a doctor in the future. However, I feel like the baby is going to disrupt a lot of my studying or resting time because that's what babies do. She's due to have the baby in September, however, the lease does not end until January of 2023, so I will have to live with her and the baby until then. I haven't told her my plans yet because I know she will take this very personally and we still have 11 months until the lease ends. But am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Run far and fast. She will dump everything she can on you. Talk to your landlord about your options. Talk to your landlord ASAP and also look through your lease agreement if you're allowed to sublet or break it. Your grades will suffer when your roommate tries to push responsibility of the baby onto you. Don't tell her anything until you have another place ready for you to move into. Otherwise, for revenge, she might destroy your things, tell lies to the university to get you into trouble, tell your friends and classmates lies to make them hate you or pressure you to help her, etc. Not the jerk. Leave before the baby is born, like ASAP. She will guilt you when she gets big and daily tasks are harder. She will guilt you during her recovery after birth. She will guilt you with the reality of motherhood and she gets stressed out. You will say, I can't leave a pregnant friend. You will say, I can't leave a friend that just gave birth. You will say, I can't leave a friend that is struggling with a newborn. Talk to your landlord. Not the jerk. Does your friend follow a lot of influencers who talk about manifesting their ideal lives or something? Because your friend seems to be living in a delusional world where all the money and support she needs to survive will just magically appear. In reality, she's just using people. She's using her mom currently, and she has plans to use you. You cannot allow that to happen. It's just unfortunate that you're stuck on the lease for almost another year. Do you have family close enough that you could stay with them, or at least on weekends, before the baby arrives, and until your lease is up and you can move out? It's not ideal by any means, but the easiest way to avoid being roped into unpaid childcare by your friend is to simply never be there. OP. She is definitely the quick money scheme type of girl, always trying things that never work out. Unfortunately, I don't have any family to go live with. I just got out of foster care recently and didn't have a place to go. I found a temporary place, and after trying options for a more permanent place, she was my only option. So instead of becoming homeless, I opted for her as my roommate under the condition that her mother be on the lease as collateral for myself, because I know me and her mother were more financially responsible. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I wouldn't want to live with her either. Maybe she can go live with that dude who's twice her age who knocked her up. Am I the jerk for refusing to sign anything for my husband while my eyes are blindfolded? Ever since I got out of the hospital for chronic problems, my husband has been introducing me to some games every evening. One game used to be about doing things while my eyes are blindfolded, involving puzzles, Rubik's Cubes, shaped objects, etc. We'd take turns to do it just for entertainment. Just a couple of days ago, he's been trying to get me to sign papers while wearing a blindfold. I refused to do it because he never lets me take a look at what I'm signing, neither before or after. He says that he was just trying to see if I could leave the same signature every time I sign, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. I told him I don't want to play this game unless and until he shows me the papers first. He said, "Never mind then," and stopped bringing it up. Last night, he tried to convince me to give it a try and even volunteered to go first. I asked if he was going to show me what I was going to sign, and he made a face and said no. It's the rules and I should respect them. I refused, and he kept on about how I keep acting worried and suspicious for no reason. He said I clearly don't trust him, and he was hurt by finding that out now after everything we've been through. We had an argument, and I told him to drop it and not bring it up again, period. He was mad, despite saying it was no big deal. He was obviously upset with me and kept talking about how I don't trust him and that I was out of line to assume or suspect anything from him like this. I might be paranoid, but I couldn't help it. I do think I was the jerk after he stood by my side when my own family didn't even visit. Not the jerk. This is extremely suspicious. Obviously, he wants you to sign something important. Financial documents, loan, will property, divorce papers. List could be endless. Do not sign anything blindfolded. I would add, do not sign on any blank papers from now on. OP. This is what I suspected, but I couldn't tell him because he might think I don't trust him. He already does, but I didn't want to make it obvious. It's not his fault because I easily distrust everyone due to my past. It all just depends on the situation I'm in. This is perfectly normal thing to not trust. Either he is gaslighting you about it, or he is somehow completely ignorant of how this is coming across. Unlikely. The fact that he pushed the issue is so suspicious. At the very least, it's a red flag for personality. Much more concerned that he's hiding something big. The fact he brought it up again, I could, possibly, see the first time thinking it's a fun challenge, but then be like, oh, that does seem weird. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Homeboy's definitely up to something. This sounds exactly like something I would do to Reddit boy. I was forced to eat at fancy restaurants for a month. Many years ago, I got put on a work assignment for months that required me to travel to New York City and stay every Monday through Friday. I was assisting a company manager with a project, and my hotel was near his regular office in the theater district. If you are not familiar, the theater district is heavily built for tourists. Restaurants are generally kind of fancy and expensive. There were really not any quick and cheap options for dining in that area. The company had a generous meal policy of up to $30 to $40 a meal for travel expenses. I did use that for a bit, but the food got to feeling too indulgent and kind of ridiculous given it was an extended assignment. Also, I was working really long hours and did not want to go sit in restaurants. I just wanted to go watch TV and sleep in my room. So after the first week or so, instead, I went to a grocery store on Monday night. I bought some basics for cereal, sandwiches, and snacks, and some frozen meals I could microwave for lunch in the office. It cost about $60. I then took a few cans of soda from my hotel fridge to make room for my weekly food purchase and returned them before checking out at the end of the week. And that was it for food costs, with an occasional meal out here or there. I did the same the next 4 weeks, submitted my expense report at the end of the month. You know where this is going. A lady from accounting called and refused to reimburse my expenses because $60 is more than $40, the max allowance for a meal purchase. I explained that had covered 5 days of food, but was told it didn't matter. I then spent the next month trying all the food in the neighborhood. There really were not any cheap options. I went out to eat a few mornings, lunch whenever I found time, and dinner absolutely every day. I could have bought a few installments of groceries, but the once-a-week shopping convenience was part of why I'd wanted them. It had also seemed wasteful to me to go out for an expensive meal every night for long-term travel, but now I'd been told that was preferred by accounting to my grocery bills. The next month, I got a call from my New York City manager asking how I had run through more budget every week of the month than the entire month before combined. I explained the grocery situation, and he thanked me and hung up. About 10 minutes later, that same lady from accounting called me to tell me that they'd pay my still not reimbursed grocery bill, and any going forward as long as the daily amount averaged for the week was under the aggregate meal allowance. I happily returned to a more reasonable diet. Am I the jerk for not putting my husband's children in my will? My husband Jack and I married later in life. We were both in our 50s. It was a second marriage for both of us. He has 3 kids. I don't have any biological kids, but I'm still very close to my former stepson, Thomas, that I helped raise. We were both very well off financially, Jack more than me. Jack owned his business and was upfront that he intended that business to be left to his kids. We signed a prenup before our wedding that basically said we each get to keep what we brought into the marriage. We kept our finances separate, though we both contributed to a joint account for household expenses, which we split 50-50. We did our wills at this time. Jack left everything to his kids, and I left mine to Thomas. We were both aware of what the other had done, and we were fine with it. Jack's business went under about 4 years ago. He was desperate to keep the business going and poured all his savings into it. The business had been his grandfather's and then his father's, and he was determined to be able to hand it down to his kids. He ended up losing almost everything. He was completely devastated. Standard of living-wise, not much changed, except that I'm paying 100% of the household expenses. I love him, and I'm fine with this. I had a health scare about a month ago where I realized that if Jack passed, Jack would be left with nothing, as my will gives everything I own to Thomas. I told Jack that I was planning to change my will. My plan was to put a third of my assets into a trust for Thomas's kids. He has 2 currently that both call me Nana. A third directly to Thomas, and a third in a trust for Jack. I would set it up so that Jack would receive a generous monthly check, but that after he passed, the assets in the trust would go to Thomas. I did it that way because I want Jack taken care of while he is alive, but after that, I want it to go to Thomas, not Jack's kids. Jack is furious that his kids aren't going to receive anything. He kept pointing out that I have 3 stepkids, not just one former one. Why are his kids getting nothing and Thomas everything? I should say that by the time we got together, Jack's kids were grown. One already had a kid and another was married. Other than the occasional holiday, I've never lived with Jack's kids. While he is not mine biologically, Thomas is my son in every way that counts. While I get along with Jack's kids, we are not close at all. Jack is threatening to leave me over this. He keeps saying that if I don't care about his kids, that means I don't care about him. I've told him that's nonsense and that I don't respond well to ultimatums. We had planned to leave our assets separately before we were ever married, but now that he doesn't have money, suddenly he wants me to leave my money to his kids. Am I the jerk for not wanting to? Not the jerk. You kept your finances separate. He knew of the deal. Now he's changing it because his financial situation changed. He was the one making more in the first place, so he did not care about your money. But because now he has less, he cares about your money. Would he have added your stepson to his will and divided his assets 4 ways if you had lost a lot of money? I seriously doubt it given his behavior. OP: I do not believe he would have, and I would have understood that. Thomas is my son, in the heart, former stepson legally, not Jack's. Please don't choose a man you've known for a lesser amount of time over your stepson. This man is showing his true colors by threatening to leave you. You both made a deal, and he's the one that's trying to push your boundary. I don't get it. After Jack's little fit about your proposed will change, I just let him know you'll be leaving it as it's been all along. And if your marriage doesn't mean more to him than money his kids can get out of it, he should take care not to have the door hit him on the backside on his way out. It's hilarious that he's threatening to divorce you over this. The guy's being 100% supported by OP, and the change to her will was meant to include him instead of just leaving everything directly to her son Thomas in case of her passing. The jerk thinks demanding his kids be included under the threat of a divorce, that will mean he's no longer supported by OP, nor included in her will, somehow makes sense. Dude has zero leverage for his idiotic demands and doesn't even realize it. It is indeed hilarious. OP is still alive, so the prenup will kick in, so her will be irrelevant. He will get absolutely nothing. OP, let him leave you. He only wants equity now that it suits him. Do not give in. This man is being completely unfair. Now, it might be because of the stress of losing everything. If you want to fight for it and give him the opportunity to sort himself out through counseling, that's on you. But that ultimatum is unacceptable to me. OP: I don't find my husband talking about a divorce hilarious at all. I find it gut-wrenching. Don't misunderstand. I have no intention of giving in to his ultimatum, but Jack is the man I had expected to spend the rest of my life with. This isn't a funny situation at all. I can only imagine how heartbreaking this is for you, especially at this point in your life. I'm truly sorry you're going through this. I do, however, hope this has opened your eyes to the kind of person you married. He didn't care to leave you anything when he had it, but now that he's broke, he wants everything you own? That's extremely selfish. You were very kind to alter your will, and now he's trying to take advantage of that kindness. If he wants his kids to have something, he can get himself a good job and start saving. At the very least, he needs to start to contribute to your expenses. You shouldn't be supporting him the rest of his life, especially after the way he's treated you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. I will make you stay the 3 months notice if you don't work hard. Notice period negotiation. Necessary background. I was working in a country that allows 14 sick days per year, and actually with no doctor report if you have up to 3 days sick. On top of that, we have 25 PTO plus bank holidays. This was an office job. I was the only one in my team who didn't have a 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. approach and stayed to get my work done, improve things, and help in case of any issues. My manager was able to manage himself to be the only person in the company to work 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., so he wasn't really aware of who was helping out in the afternoon, but he knew perfectly who was more hardworking and committed. So it was a coincidence that on a very rainy day in a typical sunny location, I was not feeling good, so I texted him I was sick that day. He replied back to me that it was an excuse for a rainy day on a Monday, and I was no professional, and he wanted a doctor's certificate when he had no right to ask for one. Good. I know I have 14 sick days allowed, and this was my first one, so I got a doctor's certificate saying I need to take the full week off. I sent the certificate to my manager and a copy to his manager and take a full week off that I enjoyed in my house doing some sports and watching some movies and series. After I came back, he told me how much he missed me and realized who really gave a hoot on the project. Okay, on to the main story. In that company, I had a 3 months notice period that was ridiculously long for my level. I spoke with my manager that I was going to relocate for personal reasons, and I was leaving the company and I needed to negotiate the notice period to 2 months. I offered to work on weekends, extra hours, or whatever was needed, but I couldn't stay so long due to the other company in a different place of the world. He told me not to worry about that. He could get me a 2-month notice if I work hard until the last day. I was the hardest worker on the team. During the next 15 days, I asked him every day if he got my letter from HR with my last day because I had a lot of stuff to take care of to move very far away. He always said, "Stop asking and work harder, or you will stay for 3 months." malicious compliance. I have a workstation and a laptop, and I have in total 4 screens. So I opened Facebook on one screen, Twitter on another screen, news in another screen, internet games in the other screen. I worked in a very open place where all the big boss can see our screens. So very rarely I open the news, maybe 5 minutes per day in the smaller screen top. I did this during his lunch break to make sure that when he came back, he would see all of this. He came back to me very angrily saying, "What the heck are you doing?" My reply was, "I've called the other company and they're okay if I relocate 1 month later, so I will enjoy the rest of the 3 months here at my place." "You can't do that," he replied. "Yes, I can. You can only fire me and pay me for the full 3 months notice period." "I promised you to have 2 months notice, and now this?" Promises are just words. Until I get the HR letter saying clearly that my last day is the one we agreed on with a 2 months notice, I will keep my 4 screens like this. So after 15 days, he only took less than 1 hour to get the letter from HR, and I came back to work as normal. Also, he tried to mess things up with my pending holiday with a bad report of HR where I was losing 6 full-time paydays. At the moment I was leaving, they did a performance review of my team, and even when I was on notice, I pulled out more work than the other 2 best members in my team. Never confused to be a professional with letting bullies take advantage of you. Am I the jerk for turning my work phone off on vacation? I don't even believe I have to ask this, but I'm a bit worried about how things are going to go on Tuesday. I recently moved to another team with the company I've worked for the last 2.5 years. Before I got promoted, I had this last week booked off to visit my sister and first niece, which was a big deal to me. I'm also in Canada, and this Monday is already a holiday as it's family day. The new team was informed as well, but I could tell my new supervisor was annoyed by it. He even asked if I could reschedule, but I said I couldn't. I already had to wait a month to meet my niece because my sister is being very cautious with visitors, and I wanted to go help her and her husband and bond. My last day of work was Monday, and I'm supposed to be back on Tuesday. Monday, when I got to the airport, I turned off my work phone. This week with my sister and little niece has been incredible, but extremely busy. I barely have had any interest in checking my own phone because of all the catching up and baby time and just relaxing. I had noticed a call from a number I didn't recognize on Wednesday, but I didn't think much of it. Today, we're having a lazy day, and I decided to flip my work phone on to see if I had any emails to start prepping for next week. I had 20 voicemails and hundreds of messages and emails, with over half of them being from my manager demanding why I hadn't zoomed in for meetings and why I wasn't reachable. I checked my phone voicemail, and the unknown number was him saying he hoped there was a darn good excuse for why I was off the grid if I wanted to keep my job. He even started out the voicemail with, "I'm so sorry you're in the hospital, because that's the only reason I should be needing to hunt you down like this." In Slack, I had a few DMs from coworkers I feel I get along with saying I need to reply ASAP because my absence was impacting them with how mad our boss was. This is my first time not being in an entry-level position, and I'm freaking out. Is the standard that vacations are still worked on? Did I mess up by turning off my work phone? Tomorrow is a holiday for the whole office, so I might not be able to fix things until Tuesday. Am I going to be fired? When I was in the other departments, days off meant days off, so I'm just scared I'm missing something and a huge jerk to my boss and my team. Not the jerk. Keep the messages and go to HR. You were on an approved vacation. He has no right to your time when you're off the clock. Yup, those messages are basically harassment. Manager complains about driving route. Saves £5 a month, but costs the company £1,000. I had a job some years ago where I needed to visit a different customer's premises every day. There were many of us doing this job across several teams, and the expectations was that you drove your own car and were paid a mileage rate. There were no company-provided cars. All was fine until I changed from one team to another, and to a new manager queried my first mileage claims submitted to them. The location of our office was on the edge of town, and to reach many of our customers, you could either drive on the main road to the next town, which got you there quickly and safely, or you could take some narrow country lanes, which were a nightmare to drive through, so everyone obviously used the main road. But the manager had discovered the country lane route was 3/4 miles shorter, so 1.5 miles on a round trip. That made 60 pence, 82 cents, difference to the mileage claim for each day. A visit to a customer took a whole day. The manager refused to authorize the claims for the main road route and insisted I resubmitted with the lower mileage as that was what the company rules said you could claim. Fine, no problem. The claim for the month was reduced by £5, $7. But then I told them I was no longer going to use my car to drive to customers, any customers anywhere. There was no obligation in the employment contract to do so, and being in the UK as a long-term employee, there was no way they could get rid of me. The issue was that our customers were not that far away at around 15 miles, but they were mainly in remote areas or on edge of town industrial estates where there was no direct public transport. If you did try and use public transport, then a 30-minute journey turned into a 2-hour journey with all of the connections, and a 1-day customer visit became a 2-day visit, so having productivity. For the next month's claim, instead of paying about £8 a day in mileage, the company now had to pay for a rental car or a taxi, both of which cost around £50, $70 a day. My travel claims now went from around £160 a month to £1,000, all to save £5. After the first month, as the manager had a team of 10 all doing the same work, they initially spent an inordinate amount of time trying to allocate me customers that were on public transport routes. But then my colleagues in the team, who had also been taken to task by the manager over the same mileage issues, saw what was going on and also started to refuse to use their own cars. Eventually, after some months, senior management had to step in when they saw how their travel budget was being exhausted and decreed that people could claim for the sensible route. Most went back to driving, but some of us remained using taxis and rental cars, as there was still no contractual obligation to use your own car. My brother wanted to propose to his girlfriend at my upcoming wedding. I said no, and all of this happened. I, 27 male, will start this off by saying my wedding is scheduled for April because my fiance, 25 female, has always dreamed of a spring wedding. And I really like the idea too. I have an older brother though, 30 male. And last Saturday, I was called over to my parents' house to talk about something, but they refused to tell me what it was until I got there. They then sat me down with my brother and told me that my brother wants to use my wedding as the perfect day for him to propose to his girlfriend. I was instantly mad and told them absolutely not, but they ganged up on me. I ended up so enraged to the point that I, one man, somehow backed all 3 of them into a corner. I told them that if they want to do this, then not only will they all be uninvited, but I'll also cut off the financial support I've been giving monthly since they paid to have my golden child brother go through college by taking out a second mortgage. I landed a decently high-paying job and have been sending $500 to my parents monthly to help ease their mortgage. And I didn't ask for a stake in the ownership of their house either because I really don't want it. It was entirely goodwill, and I can cut it off anytime. I left without speaking anything more to them, but my brother came to my home the next day to yell at me that I ruined his big chance because now our parents are siding with me and say they'll evict him if he tries to propose at my wedding. He said I was financially blackmailing our parents and that he just wanted a good chance to propose because he was afraid his girlfriend might leave him soon. I said that was his problem, not mine. Because my wedding day is not about him, and if he tries to propose at my wedding, I will have him thrown out. That's not a maybe, but a definite, and I doubt his girlfriend would appreciate her proposal followed up with being tossed out by a bouncer. He yelled a few choice words at me, then went crying to our only surviving grandparent, our maternal grandmother, and she called and lost it at me over the phone. No surprise, my brother heavily embellished the version of the story he told her, but she still sided with him after I gave her the real story. She tried to hold her ground, but the verbal backlash I ended up giving her left her crying. That got back to my parents, who were upset with me for taking things so far, but I told them I only went that far because I had to when they were all trying to get me to let my brother use my wedding as his springboard for a proposal. They ended up agreeing with me, but still stated they feel like I'm being harsh. And my brother showed up at my home again to scream at me that I'm the jerk, and I hope I'm happy with myself for not allowing him the opportunity. My fiance knows what my brother tried to do, and she's very angry about it. She's almost ready to have him uninvited if he pursues this any further. Normally, I have a very mild temper, but when it comes to certain people like my brother, parents, and grandmother, I can easily get short with them because of all the past favoritism. My grandmother especially. She always sided with my brother and believed his lies no matter what he did. She's the biggest reason my parents favored my brother too. She kept trying to convince me over the phone to let my brother propose at my wedding that I ended up losing it on her. I ended up speaking with my brother again and threatened to tell his girlfriend if he was still intending to propose at my wedding without permission. He took it poorly and called me an awful person, so I pointed out that my wedding isn't about him. Our parents were there for this, and they backed me up. I think my brother did a double take when they did that. My dad pointed out that he had raised my brother wrong, and that was on him. So from now on, my brother was to show them real respect, and they wanted to get an official lease drawn up for him to pay proper rent and utilities. He was only paying them $300 a month without contributing to any utilities or food, and if he doesn't want to pay, he can move out and they'll rent his room to someone else. My brother turned to our mom for help, but she just agreed with Dad. He looked like he was having a conniption and then left the house. He came back a couple hours later, but spoke to no one and locked himself in his room. 2 days later, my brother announced he was moving in with Grandma because she invited him, and our parents basically told him that if he wants to live with her, then to go ahead. My brother responded to this by saying we all hate him for just wanting to propose to his girlfriend. My parents pointed out that it's not that he wanted to propose, but where he wanted to do it, and he'd get no support for it. He's refusing to talk to our parents now. My grandmother did try to call me again, but it ended up with me telling her that my brother will not be allowed to propose at my wedding, plain and simple, so he can get over it or not come. And the same goes for her. I ended up calling her out on her favoritism towards my brother since we were kids, which she tried to deny at first, but couldn't keep doing so because of how much I'd pointed out. She ended up crying again while I told her that if she keeps trying to insist on this, then she won't be coming to my wedding. She begged me not to rescind her invite, but still said she doesn't understand why I couldn't let my brother have his way before ending the call. My fiance is 100% on my side and is fully ready to remove my brother and grandmother from the wedding. My grandmother hasn't called again, and she's not talking to my parents either. My guess is my brother went crying to her again to tell her mommy and daddy weren't enabling him anymore. So she offered for him to move in with her, but there's literally nothing she can do to sway me, and I think my last conversation with her made her realize that. I didn't wish to tell my brother's girlfriend, but she called me up on Saturday about my Reddit post. She saw it read in an online video and then realized it might be me with the way I described my brother and grandmother. So yeah, now she knows. She ended up tearing my brother a new one, and he still tried to justify himself to her. That's when she told him they were through and cut all contact with him. My brother, of course, blamed me, even though his girlfriend said that she's been ready to leave him for a while now, and if he had tried to propose, no matter where, she would have told him no. So, that's it. My brother showed up at my place one more time to have a fit and said he's boycotting my wedding. He actually thought he had leverage that he and Grandma won't go. I said I wouldn't miss them, and that he's in his 30s now and needs to grow up. Our parents have cut the umbilical cord and are no longer supporting him, and they're already repainting his room to rent it to someone else. And they plan on renting out my old bedroom as well, because they need the money after the financial hole he left them in after dropping out of college just to mooch off of them for a while, and then get a degree with an online college later, and then barely paying any rent, while also making them pay for his food and utilities despite having a good paying job. They spent the world on him, and he wasn't the least bit grateful. That made my brother just shut down and leave, and since then, we've not heard a peep out of him. That's everything that's happened from my original post up until now. Yes, I have very good security hired for the wedding, and they'll toss my brother out like bouncers in a heartbeat. My Karen sister-in-law asked to live with us, so I laughed in her face. For the sake of not writing a huge post, I'll just say my sister-in-law and I have a very tense relationship. She's a very hateful and mean person, constantly taking digs at me, telling anyone who will listen that I'm lazy, I'm a bad parent, and I'm not good enough for her brother. I let it roll off my shoulders for the most part, because frankly, her opinion of me is pretty much irrelevant, and I have my own opinions on her, but I keep it to myself. Not saying anything if I don't have anything nice to say and all of that. This weekend, when we were over at his parents' house, where she also lives, she sat us down and said she wanted to change from living with their parents, where rent is free and endless childcare is provided by my mother-in-law, and started thinking it might be a good idea to move in with us. I couldn't help it. I immediately started laughing. The entitlement and audacity honestly took me off guard, given the fact that my mutual distaste for her is not a secret, even if I stay cordial to keep the peace. Everyone looked at me in shock, and since the damage was already done, I said, "That's not happening, and you know it." Since she's the person she is, she immediately started her verbal attack, pointing out all of my flaws and classy things like that. Why not behave that way in front of the kids? I gathered up my kids without another word, and we waited in the car for my husband. I could tell he was kind of mad, and he later told me I should have just let him handle it, because he would have obviously said no as well. I would be lying if I said I had regrets. The only thing I wish hadn't happened is exposing the kids to that behavior. I don't know though. Maybe that was a jerk response. So I'm here to ask, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It was so satisfying to read about somebody reacting like that to a bully. It wasn't the most diplomatic response, but I think it was a long time coming. Your spineless husband, who repeatedly allows his aggressive sister to insult you, that too in front of your kids, is angry because you laughed? So basically, his approach is that his sister's constant demeaning, insults, personal attacks are a-okay, but for his wife to laugh in self-defense is infuriating? You might need to stop being nice and take a much sterner stance on disrespect with your husband. Am I the jerk for naming my adoptive parents instead of my biological ones? This is kind of emotional for me, so please be nice, even if I suck here. I, 26 female, am all set to finish my PhD this year. Some of my published work has recently gotten press coverage in certain circles, and an article was even written about it in my hometown newspaper. In an interview, I was asked about my family, and I provided a picture of me with the people I consider my real parents, even though they've never legally been my parents. That's what prompted the controversy. My biological family is extremely religious, and they kicked me out when I was 17. My grandparents let me stay for long enough to finish school, but it was rough. I was able to scrape by and cobble together enough scholarships for college out of state, but I had a breakdown early in my freshman year because I was so stressed out in a big city for the first time, and I had literally nobody. There was a tiny restaurant off campus that was cheap and quiet, and I used to go there sometimes just to get away, and because the immigrant couple who ran it were always nice to me. After the lady asked if I was okay one day and I broke into tears, they kind of just adopted me. They talked me through my breakdown and had me over for dinner and on holidays and treated me just like one of their kids. I helped them with some things around the restaurant while I was in school. Their daughters are older than me, but we're friends, and I'm an auntie to their kids now. These people had no reason to take me in. We're not even the same race, but they did, and I introduced them as my parents now, and they call me their daughter. Once I'm established in my career, I plan to chip in to help them retire. I have kept some contact with my biological family, and the relationship has improved with time as my parents have mellowed out, and several of my younger siblings and other family have left the religion or become much less involved, but I can't forget being abandoned. They've been wanting me to come visit for a while, but I haven't. When they saw the picture of me with my adoptive parents in an article, they freaked out. Their argument is that they raised me, and they already apologized for kicking me out, so this is very hurtful. I think I wouldn't be doing my work without my adoptive parents' intervention, but they aren't my legal parents either. A lot of my biological family and friends are split on the issue. Some say I should have thrown my biological parents a bone since reconciliation is happening slowly. Not the jerk. Forget biological for a second. Couple A kicked you out at a vulnerable age for no reason. Couple B scooped you up and showed you unconditional love. You are not wrong either way, but it's clear why you chose the way you did. Congratulations on your hard-earned education. Congrats on finding a true family. I think it's really sad that parents so easily discount serious emotional pain. They don't realize that the damage done may never be healed. They need to accept what they did and live with the consequences. All you had to do was let me walk away. Some background. I'm a practicing internal medicine physician and formerly a 50% owner in what was once a fairly successful med spa with 4 locations, at least until what happened below. Before anyone accuses me of breaking the law, blah blah blah, don't. This has been litigated, resolved, and I won. But it is a fun story. In the beginning, my business partner and I were mere acquaintances working with a large hospitalist practice. Looking for extra income to pay off student loans, we decided to band together and open a med spa offering Botox, minor cosmetic procedures, B12 infusions, etc. And it was a huge hit, big enough for us to go full-time and expand. This lasted around 7 years. Beginnings of problems. My partner decides that his wife isn't for him and begins to step out on her. Now, this is none of my business. However, it does become my business when you embezzle money to pay for your sugar baby's gifts from our business account. Fast forward a few years, and I've sat on this information because business overall was too good to walk away from it. However, lockdown changed things and we had to close 2 of our 4 locations. My partner has never been great with money or time management, which is why for the most part, I handled all of the back office stuff from ordering supplies to billing and payroll and so on. This comes into play later. Around 6 months ago, I began looking for a new position and found a new job. I didn't want to leave my partner in a hard spot, so I gave him a 90-day notice to find another partner or otherwise get his business affairs in order before I resigned. He instead used this time to siphon off more funds for his side piece and allow his unruly kids to ransack my office while I was away on a family vacation and frequently not showing up to work or showing up late or super hungover, leaving me to do extra work. My time to go and time to get even. Finally, the time had come to wind down my time per our agreement. My partner was to buy out my 50% of the practice, which we agreed would occur on the Monday of my last week. Basically, I'd take 50% of our liquid assets as a bank transfer. Monday, upon checking, the bank account had been locked out, and upon regaining access, found that $30,000 of my half had been moved to an account I did not have access to. I had it and spent the next few days plotting my revenge. Remember those back office things that I handled above? Well, all of those documents, processes, order forms, etc., well, they are all on our shared office hard drive and absolutely vital to the practice, and way too much work for my partner to do himself in a short time. I just so happened to buy an identical model and take the original hard drive home with me. Upon plugging the hard drive in, I found a backup of his calendar, pictures and emails between him and his mistress, which I forwarded to his wife. The following day, I ran a full-page ad in the local newspaper announcing a special holiday deal on our services, which we had planned. Lastly, I hired some college students to write a slew of bad reviews on Google and Yelp to tank the overall ratings. Aftermath. The week after my departure, the clinic was insanely busy and quickly ran out of supplies. Since the order forms, etc. were gone, he had to turn away new and long-standing clients. My partner sued for the documents, etc., and I countersued for the $30,000 he owed me. We settled by exchanging the 2. I have since heard his wife divorced him, his mistress left him, and subsequently he has filed for bankruptcy as the clinic never recovered. And his wife cleaned him out. I, on the other hand, really like my new job. Am I the jerk for not changing birthday tradition for my partner's kid? My daughter, Hazel, who's 7, has been obsessed with animals, especially monkeys, for most of her life. On her birthday each year, minus the last for obvious reasons, we visit a local holiday park and petting zoo. My mother started this tradition for my nieces, 28 female and 21 female, who have obviously outgrown it by now, but I like to carry it on. I explained the tradition over breakfast to Natalie, my partner of 3 years, expecting her to be excited too, but she was not. Natalie told me that her daughter, Gracie May, who's 8, is a fearful child and too worrisome around animals such as horses, donkeys, and goats to enjoy a day out. Natalie suggested that we try somewhere new that would be less frightening for her, a new tradition. I knew Hazel would be heartbroken, so I insisted on the holiday park and petting zoo. While Hazel, my niece, who's 21, Natalie's son, Jack, who's 10, and I went to the holiday park, Natalie stayed at home with Gracie May. Jack hadn't seen a goat in person before, so that was exciting for him, whereas Hazel was tall enough to go on rides she couldn't previously, which excited her. Hazel and Jack each picked up a toy from the gift shop on our way out, and we stopped at McDonald's on the way home for dinner. So overall, Hazel had a good birthday. Natalie was less thrilled about the day. I thought I had been nice to include Jack, but she thought I had driven a wedge between the siblings by taking one and not the other. I said Gracie May can do what she wants on her birthday, but it was Hazel's birthday, so it would be unfair for it to revolve around Gracie May. Natalie thinks I was heartless for isolating her daughter, not even bringing her McDonald's, while she listened to Hazel and Jack talk about the fun they had had. This annoyed me, as Natalie had been the one saying Gracie May would have hated the trip, which was why she wasn't invited. Natalie doesn't think I'm putting in enough effort to establish that we're supposed to be a family now, and that we do things together, which generally I'd agree with, but surely Hazel's birthday is supposed to be about her. Regardless, Gracie May is clearly miserable and feels very left out, while Hazel and Jack had a brilliant time. I didn't want to hurt anyone, I just wanted my daughter to have a special day, but I do understand why it would upset her. She's clearly an emotional kid. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clarify, we ate McDonald's at the restaurant. Nobody brought it home and nobody ate it in front of her. Natalie had already fed Gracie May. Also, the holiday park is a circuit. The petting zoo is unavoidable. Edit 2. My partner and I do not live together. I spoke to her at breakfast 2 days before the party and did not see her, Gracie May, or Jack until the day of, so I had no opportunity to ask Gracie May personally. I couldn't have planned it sooner as, due to weather issues here, we were unsure if the park would even be open. You're not the jerk, and I don't get why your partner didn't just take Gracie May out instead of having her sit at home and sulk. Because she wanted a reason to prove her point by allowing her daughter to remain miserable. She'll probably try to use this again in the future if she doesn't get her way when it comes to other events that revolve around OP's daughter. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Natalie? Please let us know. OP sounds like a great parent. I'm sure they'll do the right thing when it comes to this Natalie creature. This is why I didn't want your brat watching my movie with me. People involved. We've got entitled mother, entitled father, entitled kids 1 through 3. We've got me, my mom, and my dad. The shenanigans. This Sunday, my mom told us that she invited entitled mother and father over to visit. Me. Cool. Are they bringing their kids? Mom. Yes, that won't be an issue, will it? Me. Hope not. By this point, I'd started a violent movie and had closed my door. Partway through, I heard them arrive and decided to stay in my room. I wanted to watch my movie, and Super Mormons weren't going to like it. A little while later, I heard my door open. I hit pause. Me. You ever heard of knocking? Entitled Kid 3. I want to watch TV. Me. Not only no, I'm watching my movie on my setup. You need to leave my room. Now. He screeches in eldritch horror. And storms off. Me. Oh no. I make my way upstairs to avoid being shouted at. As soon as I enter the living room, I get bombarded. Entitled mother. What is this about you telling my child that they can't watch TV? Me. Firstly, they barged into my room. And yes, my door was closed. Secondly, yes, I told them that they couldn't watch TV on my computer. I'm already watching something, and I don't like others using my computer. Just let him watch TV. He can finish your movie with you. That is a very bad idea. Like 10 for 10 bad idea. Entitled father. Jeez, are you slow or something? Just do what she said. Me. Fine. Only if you're sure. Entitled mother. Yes. Me. Okay then. Entitled kids 1 through 3 all get the same look of smug success. I make my way back downstairs, and Entitled Kid 3 is going on about how he wants to watch all these kids shows. I just keep my mouth shut. I didn't want to teach him any new words. Upon reaching my room, I pull up a spare chair for him. I sit in my chair and hit play. A little bit of time passes, and Entitled Kid 3 is looking a bit scared. Hitting pause. Me. Last chance. You really want to be here? Don't make me tell my mom on you. I hit play. By about this point, the protagonists enter an abandoned drill. They soon found out the guy that led them is betraying them. I'm keeping an eye on both the screen and Entitled Kid 3. The betrayer then gets blown up by a shoulder cannon. He freaked out. He shot out the door and right up the stairs. Hitting pause, I follow at a leisurely pace. Upon hitting the top, I start getting yelled at by his mother. How dare you do this to my baby? You're a horrible person to watch something so horrid. I demand that you make it right immediately. Excuse me? You demanded that I let your kid watch my movie. You never said that it was inappropriate. If I'm not mistaken, you and your husband, entitled father, dismissed me, saying it was a bad idea. About 5 seconds of pure silence ensues, only to be broken by my phone going off. As my text tone fills the room on full volume, Entitled Kid 3 phrases in horror. The same sounds from the movie filled the room. Unfreezing, he breaks down crying. My dad starts laughing. Entitled mother. Well, I never. Entitled father. How did he? Then they left. Your parents need better friends and or to set better boundaries when visitors come to your home. A deal's a deal. I work at a credit union and we use a fancy online system to validate checks. It was designed by the guy from Catch Me If You Can. If they're over a certain value, we run them through the system and they come back either clear or with a hold recommendation, at which point we do some research on the account and decide for ourselves whether to put a hold on the check or deny it if it gives us the willies. So this day is a pretty steady one, and I'm holding down the teller line while my colleagues take lunch. A woman walks in with her partner. Her face is, soon understandably, a bit of a mess, and she looks visibly upset. So she hands me a check for $65,000 and asks to deposit it. Sure, I say. Just a heads up though, there'll probably be a couple of days hold on it, just because of the amount. How long? The boyfriend suddenly asks. Bear in mind, he is not on the check and he is not on the account, so it has exactly nothing to do with him. I'll do my best I can for you, I say very deliberately to her, directing my responses to the account holder after all. But based on the amount, you're probably looking at about 5 to 10 days. It's a security feature to protect you in case the check bounces for any reason. She nods shyly in understanding, but he butts in with, No, that won't work. I need that money this weekend. Babe, it's fine. We were going to save it anyway, she says quietly. No, I told you I wanted that charger now that we have the money for it, he responds. I do my best to roll my eyes internally and just decide to busy myself running the check. That's when I noticed what it is. This is a life insurance check for her dad. All the pieces start to fit together now. Her dad had passed, most likely very recently, and this was the check she had to remember him by. And this grade A jerk wanted it for a new car. Go gadget, malicious compliance. Okay, I'll make you a deal, I begin. I think this needs to go on hold because of the amount, but being as it's coming from a verifiable source, our system might clear it. Here's the deal. If you don't want to take my 5 to 10 days, we'll run it through the system, take whatever it says and do that. So it might go straight in? God's gift to dating asks. I've seen it clear bigger checks, yeah. If it thinks the source is good enough, then yeah, I say. This was technically true. I have seen bigger checks cleared by the system with no holds, but never an insurance check. They're too easily forged and too often, and it makes our system very paranoid. All right, that's a deal, he says. I ignore him, shoot her a knowing glance, and say very carefully, Is that okay with you? It is your check. She must have picked up on what I was putting down because she agreed very readily. Ran the check, extended 30-day hold recommendation. I enjoy watching the color drain from Casanova's face, catch the first smile on hers I've seen since she walked in, and offer him some Qui-Gon wisdom. Whenever you gamble, my friend, eventually you lose. I'm really sorry for your loss. Whatever, he spits out. I was speaking to her, I clarify. The way I see it, I just bought that poor girl 30 days to get rid of him. Just grab one or two. Last night, I had to get a few things to get through until my next big shop. So I stopped at this place that operates a lot like Aldi's. You bring your own bags, the cashier swipes your purchases at light speed, throws them back into your cart, then you move off to the side to bag them yourself. I get all my stuff rung up, and I'm now facing the counter. I have my shopping cart with all of my stuff in it to my left, my two biggest reusable plastic and fabric bags open in front of me, then the rest of those same types of bags, folded in a pile to the right of me, but on the counter. So now I'm grabbing stuff out of my cart when I hear a kid bellow right behind me, shouting to his mother, still in line, "How many, Mom? How many bags should I grab?" This kid starts rummaging through my bags while he's yelling this to his mom. So I slam my hand down on the whole pile of them, while the mother, who's not paying attention to what her kid's doing, just shouts back, "Just grab one or two of them. There's a whole pile of them. It doesn't matter." So the kid starts making motions like he's gonna try to grab my bags again. So I tell him, "No, these are my bags from home. You can't have them. They're mine." So the kid screeches back at his mom, "Ma, she said no," but also keeps trying to grab one from me, and I have to keep moving my arms around to get away from this annoying little gnat. Now I feel the need to interject. When I was parking my car, this lady parked her vehicle diagonally to mine, so I saw what she was driving. A brand new Lexus SUV, and because she felt the need to move her hands around when talking, I caught sight of a lot of sparkly things on her fingers, as well as a Michael Kors bag, so she's not hurting for money. I'm sure it wouldn't break her to splurge and pay the whole entire $1 it costs just to buy the darn plastic bags from the store. So she says to me, loudly and aggressively, with a massive attitude and overdramatic hand gestures, "You have a whole stack of them. Just give them to me." And I said, "No, just buy one from the cashiers. We both could have been out of here already." She's holding up the whole line to stand there and yell at me about how much of a jerk I am. While I take all my extra bags, shove them into the bottom of my biggest bag, and then put all of my stuff on top of them. There, no one's gonna use them. Her kid is just standing there in the middle in between both of us, doing that high-pitched war siren screech that's a really bad attempt to make it seem like he's crying, but he's really not. I think he thought if he made me believe that I was making him cry because of this stupid bag tragedy, I'd relent and give them to him. I didn't. I just walked out. She was still yelling as I was leaving. So stupid. The entire event was so stupid, and the stupidest part of it is if the kid or her would have just approached me and asked me politely, I would have given them all the bags they needed. But no, she sends her minion of evil to do her dirty work and then acted like she had every right to demand my bags. Am I the jerk because I charged my son for tickets I got for free? First, the setup. I'm a single mom to 3 boys who are 18, 13, and 12. My oldest graduated last year and is currently living at home for free while he goes to school and works so he can save. Next, the problem. Sometimes for work, I get perks for doing well or just because. The other day, I won tickets to an event that I was on the fence about going to, so I was planning on selling to a coworker who said he'd buy them if I decided not to go. I was leaning towards that option because the extra money would be nice to have a little more to play with in the family fun account. Anyway, before I could sell the tickets, my oldest son saw them and asked me for them so he and his girlfriend could go. I told him a guy from work offered to buy them, but if he wanted them, he could buy them from me instead. My son told me he didn't have the money in his budget for them, but he really wants to go, if I could just give them to him. I said no. This is a part of being adult sometimes, who just can't afford things. He pleaded some more, and I felt bad, so I said he could buy the tickets by watching his brothers while I went on an overnight with my sister. I don't like leaving the youngest two by themselves overnight, and I'll even throw a $50 gift card in so they could get something to eat before. He agreed right away, and I gave him the tickets. I thought it would be a win-win. My son goes to the event, and they had a great time. When the weekend of my overnight comes, I get snacks and leave pizza money with a note to everyone with all the info we discussed, along with the name of the hotel. Then I leave before the boys get home from school. I'm at the hotel having a good time when I get a call from my 13-year-old telling me they don't have enough money to order the pizza they want because their older brother took his share of the pizza money to go have dinner with his girlfriend. I give the two my credit card number, hang up, and call their brother who doesn't answer. After repeated unanswered calls, I get nervous, and me and my sister check out and take a cab to my house because we had both been drinking. We end up watching movies and having pizza with the boys, all while trying to get a hold of my son. At 1 a.m., he and his girlfriend come home, but it's already late, so they go to his room to sleep. Next morning, I'm upset, so I go to talk to him with a bill to pay me back for the tickets, the gift card, the hotel, the pizza money, and the cab. I also added an inconvenience fee. He said that wasn't fair because I got the tickets and the gift card for free, and I didn't have to come home because he did come home to watch the boys, so they wouldn't have been alone. I told him that wasn't the agreement and the bill still stands. Am I the jerk because I did charge him for something I did technically get for free? Edit. I had a talk with my son and he apologized and paid me back. He also wants to make it up to his brothers. He was going through some friend drama, so that's why he was so flaky and jerky. He's really not a bad kid, but he did make mistakes and he learned from them. We are still a close family, and we will still remain so. Not the jerk. You guys made an agreement on payment, and he failed to do it. You said the gift card was for pizza, for them to eat, not so he could take his girlfriend out. And you're right, this is part of being an adult. If he couldn't afford it, and he didn't want to watch his brothers, then he shouldn't have taken the tickets. You're already doing more than enough letting him live there for free. Nice old lady gets help. Mean old lady gets arrested. I'll start with some background information. I'm about 6 feet tall. I have long hair for a guy, and I'm about 16 years old, and I'm apparently an old person magnet in stores. I'll be referring to the Karen as mean old lady. Okay, so today was a strange day. I was just studying for my test for tomorrow when I realized that I ran out of snacks. It was about 10 a.m. at the time, so I figured I'd just go to the big chain store a few blocks away from my house. Looking back, I should have known most old people shop at those hours in my hometown, but I was just hungry for snacks. I am not really scary, but because of my purple jacket, black pants, and man bun, and earphones in blasting rap music, I didn't really look like an employee, or so I thought. I was just browsing the store to find some snacks and maybe something for dinner that day. As I ducked to search between the salted nuts for a decent-looking bag, I felt a hard tap on my shoulder. I turned my music off and turned around, only to see a nice old lady asking me if I could help her. I always get asked to help by old ladies. I don't know why, but they always seem to like me. So I say sure, what can I help with? She says that she wants a microwave, but she can't lift it into her cart. I tell her that I will come with her so I can help. I already had everything I needed now, so I just tag along with the nice old lady and help her with putting it in her cart and onto the belt. I kept talking to the nice old lady, and she asked me why I was so nice to her, so I say that I just try to be nice to help elderly people when I can. She tried to pay for my snacks too, but I rejected her offer because I had my card ready already. When I put her microwave in her trunk, she slid a 10-euro bill into my hand and said it was good to see that some people still behave well. After the nice old lady drives off, I realized that I forgot to buy potatoes for dinner, so I ran home, dropped everything off, and went back in. This time was less wholesome. I entered the store and went immediately to the potatoes. I tried looking for the best bag because the chain was known for their potatoes that would have more black spots than any other store, so I find a nice bag of good-looking big potatoes. As I'm lifting the big bag onto my cart, I hear a groan and tapping of a shoe on the tiled floor. So thinking that I was standing in the way, I try to move aside, but the mean old lady isn't having it. She starts to groan even louder. Knowing that I messed up, I turn around and guess what I see? A not-so-nice-looking old lady. She was probably around 60, but was wearing clothes like a 20-year-old would wear. I'm talking a crop top and light blue jeans 3 sizes too small with sandals on. And of course, she had the haircut, but more gray than blonde. I try not to judge anyone, but she was on another level. She loudly said, "Finally, I've been trying to get your attention for at least 5 minutes now." I say sorry, I wasn't paying attention. She then started screaming at me about how she demands me, not asking, but demanding, that I help her put her stuff in her car after she pays for it. I tell her that I'm not going to do it because she screamed at me. She then says, "You have no choice. You have to. It's your job. I saw you outside helping the other lady 15 minutes ago." I tell her, first of all, I am not an employee here. And second of all, if I was, I'd decline to help you due to your behavior against me just now. Then I try to walk away, but she now is in Alpha Karen mode, so she tries to push me aside. She was kind of on the bigger side, so her push with all force was kind of harder than I expected. I ended up tripping over a tile that sticks out partially and faceplant into the aisle next to me. The Karen, knowing what she did, screamed, "Ah, no, don't touch me." I was completely stunned by her actions, so didn't know what to say. So an employee arrives and she starts crying and telling him her lies while they walk to the closest bench so she can sit to rest after being jumped. I tried to get back up myself, but due to my bad landing, I managed to hurt my back and couldn't balance myself properly, so I just decided to lay down and wait until someone arrives. Luckily, an old man saw everything and came up to me to help me up. I said I can wait and that I didn't want him to hurt his back helping me up, but the old guy wasn't taking no for an answer. He just picked me up gently and gave me his cane to lean on and giggled. "My wife makes me use it just in case, but I don't need it now." As soon as I thank him, the manager arrives with a not-so-happy look, until he sees me barely being able to stand and the old man. He asks me what happened, and I tell him my story, and the old guy backs me up. He then said to me that the police are already on their way and that we can stay in his office until they get there. As soon as we hear sirens, I feel scared. I'm a boy with a man bun and am being accused of assaulting an old lady, so in my head, my life is over. I'm trying not to puke out the stress while we wait. After mean old lady did her story and said I should be fired to the police because yeah, the police can hire me from a store I don't work at. They come to me and start asking me questions. The old guy is still with us and getting bored. He just says, "Jim," apparently the manager's name, "just show them the camera footage instead of wasting this kid's time." The manager says okay here and turns his screen to show us the entire thing on security footage. I was so relieved to know that I had proof now. After 10 minutes, he asks if I would like to press charges. I said I'll contact him with my parents later. He gives me his details and we walk out. Me too, but slowly. The officer then cuffs the mean old lady and she keeps screaming all the way to the car. The old man said he was the manager's old supervisor and was also shopping for dinner that day when he noticed Karen bullying customers. We laughed a little bit and I ended up buying his groceries as a thank you for helping me, and I'm now in the hospital waiting for the results, but they think my back will be fine. Was it worth it? Probably not. Was it on purpose? Probably not. Did she deserve it? Definitely. I may be the jerk for not helping an elderly lady, but she was well capable of it if she can push me to the floor. I kicked my sister out of my house for throwing all of my food away. I seriously can't believe this is a thing, but my parents are really upset with me. My sister and I grew up together, but aren't very close. It really wasn't from any drama. We didn't have a big fight to cause distance, but rather just have opposite personalities and interests. If I had to describe my attitude towards my sister, it would be apathetic love. Like, she's my sister, so I want her to be healthy and happy, but we just unfortunately don't hang out, call to chat, etc. She recently received an opportunity to interview for a job near our hometown and reached out to see if she could stay with me for a week. My mother was ecstatic that my sister might be coming home finally. She moved across the country right after college and hasn't been back in almost 10 years, except for Christmas. She spends Thanksgiving with her in-laws, or the one-off birthday or business trip or vacation. I was more than happy to open my home up, thinking that we could maybe bond or deepen our relationship. It was all kind of awkward, but nothing horrible until the third night. I came home from drinks with my friends around 10 p.m., went into my kitchen for a snack, and realized that almost all of my food was gone. I'm not even exaggerating. I swear, 90% of my pantry was just gone. I asked my sister, and she told me that she was shocked I ate anything with preservatives and unnatural, and that I was poisoning my body. So she took it upon herself to throw away everything that she deemed unhealthy. Guys, I'm talking about so much food, both packaged and unpackaged. Even things like spices that weren't fresh were tossed. It was like someone had robbed my kitchen. I demanded that she pay to replace everything, but she dug her heels in and said that she was doing me a favor and that the way I ate was disgusting, her literal words. I know I'm biased, but my diet isn't even crazy. It's pretty much standard food you'd find at any grocery store. I was so upset, I made her pack up and leave, and she ended up having to take a cab about 30 minutes away to stay with my parents. My mom is absolutely devastated that we're fighting and insists that I apologize in order to keep the peace because she really hopes my sister will take the job and move back. I told my mom that if she wanted to lose not one, but both daughters, then she'd keep pushing me to apologize for something I feel I have a right to be upset about. My dad says that she's been crying every night though, and I love my mom so much, I feel like a huge jerk for being stubborn about the situation. Edit. To answer a few questions I was asked. Yes, I did invite my sister out to drink with me. She declined, saying that she didn't like going to dive bars and wanted to stay sober because it was a work trip. I respected that decision, but I had already planned to go out with my girlfriends. It was a birthday. I did the math, and she threw away close to $1,000 worth of food. I listed some items in a comment below, but it included dry pasta, ground beef, pre-cut veggies in a container, juice, canned soups, rice, chicken broth, leftovers, and even bread, because it was white bread. This isn't even close to the start of my list. Not the jerk. Your sister was a self-righteous jerk and was lucky she only got kicked out. I would have been tempted to call the cops on that crap. Not the jerk. But OP, your parents are literally telling you that they care more about the sister who moved away than the one who stayed. Do with that what you will. Spices can be hard to find and expensive depending on your tastes, and the food alone would cost hundreds of dollars. Get that money. Not the jerk. This is a hill I would die on. I can't imagine having to suddenly pay to replace all of my food, spices included. Never mind the wastefulness of tossing perfectly good food that could have been donated to a charity pantry. Your parents' anger is misplaced. I don't think they're angry at either of them. I just think they don't want to rock the boat and they think they're going after the easiest person to control. They should be angry at the sister, but keeping the peace is more important to them. I'm petty and in a mood. I'd sneak around to mom's house late at night and stealthily empty out her kitchen, then leave. Act all surprised when it's discovered next morning. When sister denies having done it, remind mom that sister had just done that to you and ask if your mom was going to kick her out or keep the peace now. For maximum petty points, ensure mom notices stuff in your kitchen that's exactly the same as what went missing from hers a few weeks later. Again, just act surprised and say, well, I guess it's not that much of a coincidence that I restocked my cupboards with the brands I'm familiar with growing up with you. Pity your other daughter didn't take after you like this, huh? New dress code for the IT department of one person. Backstory. Father-in-law works for a heavy equipment manufacturer, highway making equipment, machines for gold and gem mining, etc. The machines aren't really relevant to the story, only that they're big and scary enough that everyone is very strict about safety. Well, almost everyone. The company has one IT guy. He does everything from web admin to the ID badges to printer isn't working. So obviously he needs an office with a computer. The only problem is, most of his job is keeping the ancient assembly line machines on life support, so he's constantly on the factory floor fixing error code TI-86 on machine C137, etc. The problem. One day, one of the VPs of Sucking Up deigns to leave the plush veneer on the C-level suites to enter the plebeian office and takes great offense to the IT guy wearing jeans, boots, and a high-vis vest in their strictly suit-and-tie office. Protests about his job duties fall on deaf ears, and since the IT department of one person doesn't have an official C-level officer, VP of Sucking Up decides to write a new dress code for the IT department. Suit and tie at all times. No exceptions. IT guy shows up the next day in a suit and tie, tries to fix an error on the factory floor, and rightfully gets turned away at the door for lack of safety gear. He spends a few days in his office goofing off while the errors on the factory floor grow and grow. The fallout. Finally, around 3 a.m. one night, big production line X goes down. This is a huge contract for the company. The company might go under if this client goes elsewhere. As such, emergency procedures state all C-level executives and even the owner must be notified immediately if this line stops at any time for any reason. So the upper echelon of the company, including the VP, assembles in the boardroom to prepare for their firing spree. Around 5 a.m., IT guy is ordered to the boardroom where they really lay into him before they fire him. Threats of deny listing him in the industry, threats of lawsuits for damages, etc. Of course, there's the condescending, "Now what do you have to say for yourself?" question. The mic drop. He unfolds a few pieces of paper from his pocket and puts them on the table in front of the owner. "This is why I have to wear a suit and tie no matter what. This was my objection because I have to do my job properly. This is the safety officer refusing me entry for lack of safety gear, and this is the record that VP got my emails but never responded." Not a pin drop or a cricket chirp could be heard, just the faint ruffling of pages as the owner read. Finally, he spoke. "Your so-called dress code is officially revoked. VP is no longer allowed to have any authority over you. Please put on safety gear and fix machine TK421. The rest of us will stay here all day until I'm convinced this problem will never happen again." VP kept his job. He was very good at his namesake after all, and he was transferred to VP of a division that didn't exist and a workforce of one, only him. Rumor has it he's related to the owner somehow, but at least his self-righteousness can't ruin the actual work being done. You must give 2 weeks' notice. I'm an IT guy, and many years ago, I took up a job for a smallish company as their one-stop shop. It was basically the first job I talked to, and I took it because it was right down the street and allowed remote work. The pay was nothing to write home about, but I essentially had no boss and made my own hours, so it was worth it. Well, right up front, they started making weird demands. "We want someone who is going to commit to working with us for a long time, say 5 years. Also, if you quit, we want 2 weeks' notice." They must have been burned because they kept repeating these things, verbally, not written anywhere, so I didn't put a ton of stock in them, but I did agree. Time goes on and it's the same old story. Raises are essentially non-existent. I'm generally pretty adept at anything I try my hand at, technologically speaking, so I start getting pulled into additional areas of responsibility without any additional pay. My workload goes up, inflation keeps rising, but each year my raises are pushed off until next year when we make more profit. Even though I was able to demonstrate with hard figures that I was saving the company significant money and significantly reduced downtime, it wasn't rewarded appropriately. Meanwhile, I watched the owners go off to various beaches for 2-week vacations. Well, 6 weeks out from my 5-year anniversary, I get poached by another company with a significant pay bump and less responsibility. I thought about giving them the advance notice, but ultimately what made me stick to their policy of 5 years with 2 weeks notice was some disrespectful conversations the owner had had with me. I don't need to go into detail, but essentially, rather than professionally disagreeing over how some things were handled, he outright disrespected me. Additionally, I watched multiple 15 and 20-year career employees terminated with zero notice. The notice courtesy didn't extend both ways. Okay, fine. Then you can have your 5 years and 2 weeks notice. I waited 4 weeks after accepting my position with a new company before I told them. I give my notice and they start scrambling. In that company, it takes 2 weeks to make a simple decision, let alone hire a competent replacement for something important like an IT guy. They opt to go with a managed service provider, a company that provides IT services, rather than a single person like they had for decades. Given my experience with the owner and his personality, I knew this would not go well. I had prepared boatloads of documentation for all the systems and tried to turn it over to the MSP. They didn't want it, claimed it would be unreliable, and their systems could gather all the information they needed. I was there for 3 days while the MSP was gathering information, and they barely spoke to me. Okay, good luck, I said, as I gathered up all my documentation and took it with me on my last day. The owner grabs me on the way out. What would it take to get you to stay? How much do you want? Just name your price. Nope, I learned my lesson. If they don't pay you raises without the threat of leaving, then they don't value you, and they'll just use you as a stopgap while they find and train someone cheaper. The week after I quit, I start getting calls. They tried to replace hardware, and it failed, and nobody knows how to get into anything. They have to revert it back, and there's a bunch of downtime, and the MSP is doing a poor job. This continues for a few months. Hey, can you just jump on this call with us real quick so we can figure out what's causing this outage? Can you sit in on this vendor call and give us advice on replacement products? Can you do X and Y thing that the MSP cannot or will not do? Nope, I don't work there anymore. Sorry. The company goes so far as to send me a check in the mail, out of the blue, for IT services. I don't cash it. Eventually, they hire another single IT person to be on site full-time and do things their way. But at this point, he's lost critical continuity because he's only getting whatever turnover the MSP can provide, which is minimal. This also goes about as well as you'd expect given his lack of documentation and turnover. Lessons learned for the company. 1. If your people are doing a good job and you don't want to lose them, then show them that. Through pay or benefits, show them that. 2. You may not want to place strange constraints on length of employment or try to mandate the notice that employees give. Notice is a courtesy, not a right, especially if you don't reciprocate. 3. Other employees notice the way you treat your long-standing, loyal employees. 4. Be respectful. There is no reason to disrespect each other in a professional environment, especially. 5. Be sure you get all the documentation and turnover that you can. Am I the jerk for asking my daughter a question about job applications? I'm 53, male. My daughter is 27, female. I was on the phone with my daughter the other day as she is a PhD college student and long distance from us at the moment. We're all feeling frustrated and upset after the call, and I feel like I'm crazy, so thought I'd post in this sub since I read it on my work breaks anyways. Daughter is almost done with college and says she needs to apply for jobs this fall. Whenever we talk about jobs, my wife and I ask her where she wants to work, and she always just says, it doesn't work like that, and says she needs to just go wherever there are jobs available, which is weird to me because there are colleges in every state, so I say this. She says it's not like other jobs where you can just send in an application and that colleges need to be specifically hiring professors in her specialty, and then there is a long selection and interview process. So basically, she's just going to go wherever they hire her. This still didn't answer my question though, so I asked if she did have her pick, where would she go? And she said she doesn't even think about it, because it's not going to happen, so I get her hopes up thinking about a particular school. My wife says, so, if they were hiring in Hawaii or in Europe, that wouldn't be your dream job? And I said, what if she could get a job in the city near us? It's a major city with a number of universities, and we're only 20 minutes away. Or at her old college, an hour away. She just said, seriously, I don't think about it. We go through this every time. I then told her she should consider teaching at a high school because she could move closer to home again and she said she doesn't have an education degree, so that doesn't work like that. There's a Catholic school in our hometown she could work at though. I said no worries, we'd probably move to wherever she moves because we can't stand the idea of not living by her. The PhD is one thing because that's like 5 years, but I won't have that for the rest of our lives. She said that's unrealistic and that we're really overestimating the amount of free time she'd have to hang out with us all the time. And again says, seriously, can we please drop the subject? You guys are intentionally not understanding me. This was not the case though. She was just not making sense. And I find it hard to believe that she doesn't have a single dream university or that she wouldn't try to work closer to home, which I said. She then just said she had to go and hung up. So, am I the jerk for just trying to make conversation about jobs? You're the jerk. Stop badgering your daughter. Did you ever take a moment to think, maybe this is why your daughter doesn't want to move home? Take a hint and back off. Edit. I just reread the title, and it's comical that you described this as simply asking my daughter a question about her job applications. You're the jerk. Just reading this, I got frustrated with your lack of listening. I can't imagine how frustrated your daughter feels having to repeat herself over and over again. She gave you an answer. Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it's not true. You're the jerk. Talking to you sounds exhausting. She's explained that's not how it works, and that she's not getting her hopes up for any school because that's not how it works. She also doesn't want you to uproot your whole life and follow her either. As someone with a PhD, she is correct. You have no idea how any of this works. You're the jerk. You're the jerk for trying to tell her about her situation when you have zero idea what the job market in academia is like, for not understanding that she is a fully grown adult who doesn't need her parents moving to where she lives or telling her where to live or work, for assuming she'd be happy settling for teaching in a high school when she's looking for college jobs, for assuming she wants to live by you, and for assuming she wants to work in a Catholic school with all of the job restrictions that come with it. You weren't trying to make conversation about jobs. You and your wife were interrogating her and attempting to control her. You sound like a good dad to me. This is exactly how my daughter treated my wife and I before she suddenly went no contact with us about 6 years ago. Her ghosting us was what pushed my wife over the edge. We did everything we could to raise her right. No parents should ever be abandoned the way that we were. Last I heard, my daughter is married and has a kid, but still wants nothing to do with me. I've been in therapy for the last 4 years because of this, and even my doctor says sometimes kids just decide they don't want to have anything to do with you once they go off to college. If I could go back in time, I never would have had her. That girl broke my heart in ways that words can never express. Edit. I should have known you little scumbags would blame me and her mom, because in your broken little minds, the parents are always the ones to blame. I'll have you know that the day she left for college, she cried her heart out, saying how much she would miss us. We went on family trips every year. She was a star soccer and tennis player. She was a youth group leader for 4 years. She used to tell us that she would become a surgeon, buy a mansion, and build us a bungalow in her backyard for her mother and I. She was the best daughter anyone could have ever asked for. It wasn't until she became corrupted at that university that she changed her views on how we raised her. Those professors convinced her we were wrong to not let boys sleep over at our house, that we were wrong for not allowing her to attend wild parties as a teen, that we were wrong for teaching her that there is a heavenly Father who loves us all. You're all just like my daughter, and I wish nothing but bad things on you. One day your heart will break just like mine has, but 10 times worse. I promise you. Yowza canowza! This sounds like the start to a movie. The Righteous Crusader, coming soon to a theater near you. Am I the jerk for taking back my PS5 my mom gave to our cousin as a gift? I'm a 19-year-old male. My mother is 57, and my cousin is a 13-year-old male. So I waited until 2021 November to try a PS5 I've been trying since release, and on the 22nd of November, I finally got one. I was so excited to do everything with this console and couldn't wait. I bought another controller and so many games to have with this baby, even though I took out a bit of my savings. But this is also the time when people take Christmas presents into consideration, and I kept this as like a present to myself. My cousin, I'll call him Joe, has autism, and I love the little dude, but I need to clarify that he's very spoiled, and his parents don't do anything to teach him a lesson. He really wanted a PS5 and threw so many tantrums when he didn't get one. So to keep the peace, my mom took my PS5 when I was at school and hid it from me. I was shocked when I didn't see it there and really started to cry as I spent so much money for it. My mom told me that she took my PS5 to calm down my cousin and that she'll pay me back. Her idea of paying me back is an iPad. I yelled at her for so long, saying how long it took me to get it and save up money for it, and how dare she do that and invade my space. She hung up on me as I wasn't being myself and gave me time to calm down. I wasn't ready to calm down and went to my cousin's house, rang the doorbell, took my PS5 and games. I forgot to mention she took the games as well. A 300-pound iPad isn't going to cover 700 pounds worth of stuff, and went home. My aunt tried to stop me, saying, "This is all my sweet baby wants for Christmas." But I didn't care, and I drove straight home. My whole family is giving me so much pressure, saying I should give it back, as it's not my right to go against my mother's wishes. I do kind of feel bad since his family is not that financially stable, and them buying him a PS5, if they can find one, will mess up some stuff. So, am I the jerk? Edit. This was my own home. I moved out a few months prior. She got in by using the spare key I gave her for emergencies only. Not the jerk. It's yours. Your mother stole it. That's a crime, you know. Family or not, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's sad that your cousin's family doesn't have much money, but it's still a crime to steal stuff then. My sister used to give my stuff away. I always took it back from the person who got my stuff. I told her one more time and I reported to the police because it's mine. If your mother wants to give him a PS5, she can buy one and give it to him. This one is yours. My mom used to give away my stuff, so I started giving her stuff away. She never gave away anything of mine again. Not the jerk, but make sure you either take it with you or lock it up every time you leave, or she will give it back. I hate how family is like that. You work your butt off for the things you want, and they try to give them away. OP, I've put a lock on the room where I keep all my important things, so I don't have to go through it again. Won't pay overtime? Well then. I was a teenager working in a retail hardware store. This was the kind of old-fashioned store where the customer was greeted with, "May I help you?" and then work with them one-on-one to make sure to sell them what they needed and wanted. The boss was a boozer. He'd come to work in the morning, hungover and surly. He'd leave early to go hang out with his buddies at the Moose Lodge and drink. It was horrible working for him, but I stuck around because I truly loved the hardware store environment and learning from the tradesmen that were our customers. And as a 17-year-old, I relished in the role as a manager. In the summer, I worked full-time and then some. One week, I had put in over 60 hours. He came to me and tells me because I am a teen, I'm not allowed to be paid overtime. I challenged him on this because, hey, I'm not totally stupid. He finally tells me he'll pay me, but he was no longer going to pay me overtime, no matter how many hours I worked. I agreed and said no more overtime. Cue the malicious compliance. My scheduled hours did not change, opening to closing 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. On day 4, I closed the store at the exact moment I reached 40 hours on my time card, sent the part-timers home, and did not open the store the next morning. At about 11 in the morning, I got a furious phone call from him. "Why aren't you here? I have customers lined up in the parking lot." "Because you told me not to work overtime, and I've already worked 40 hours this week. Don't you remember that conversation?" "Get over here, now!" "Am I getting paid overtime?" He yelled and threatened, but I stuck with my guns and got my overtime. I made good money that summer, for a teenager. As a side note, the job ended not too long after. Boss was throwing away his profits through his drinking. He sold out and moved to Florida. Years later, I learned that he had passed of cirrhosis. Programmer revenge story. I was hired as a temp for this big food distribution company, of which will remain nameless for anonymity's sake. The woman's position I was filling in for was going on maternity leave soon. I really needed the job at the time, so I took it, and they promised if I did an amazing job, they'd hire me full-time. I was a raw materials supply distributor. Basically, I ordered supplies and sent them where they needed to go for scientists to make new foods. I have a really strong background in computer programming. After learning how to do the job in a month or so, she had her baby and I went on leave. I completely automated this woman's job in a matter of weeks using only Excel and PowerShell. I didn't say a word until the end of my last few weeks, where I basically did very little in the time leading up to her return. I added in a few updates for changes in workflows and verified all the data was correct at the end of the day after it ran, but that was all I really did. I asked for more work from my boss, which led me to fill in on the production line. a path I did not want to take. Toward the last few weeks of my temp period, the woman returned from maternity leave. I showed her what I had done. Her jaw had about hit the floor in awe that I had made all the hard work she was doing for years be completed by a computer program in a few minutes every day. In our next team meeting, it was brought up that I would need to get everyone online with this program before my temp period was up. Ding, 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 went off in my head that they are not planning on keeping me with that idiotic comment. So I obliged and got everyone on board. Unbeknownst to them, I put in a clause in the PowerShell script with an encryption locally to the PC I was using. It grabs a specific encrypted date a few weeks out from my termination date and would just stop working after that date, or once they had wiped my local folder on the PC, or just simply not having the PC on. If they had decided to keep me, I could just turn it off and no one would have been the wiser. I added this snippet to every if statement and for loop possible with a new variable every time. Thanks, PowerShell. In the code, so if someone was to go through it and try to fix it, it would be a nightmare to fix if they had the audacity to, with identifying and renaming every variable and clause and regenerating it. So as you can imagine, I was not offered a full-time position for said company, and when I had mentioned the comments when I first started for doing an amazing job, which I believe I had fit the criteria for doing so, my boss said that with SAP coming into the production team next week, my expertise would not be needed. A month or so later, I got a text from my old boss saying that he needed to talk to me about that program I wrote. It was 2 days after my magic shutoff date. I knew exactly what the call was about and never returned the call as I had a better job offer already lined up. I feel if I had returned the call, I wouldn't be able to stop laughing during the conversation of troubleshooting. Am I the jerk for being honest why I did not choose my nephew for a position? I, 61 male, work as a lobbyist for a large firm that has offices all throughout the state. I do have to travel to the offices on a weekly basis. My wife, 60 female, is a high school math teacher and is looking forward to retiring. We have a son, 25, and a daughter who's 24 that are on their own and working. Her family lives near us, but we only see them on special occasions. My wife has a sister, 59 female, that dropped contact with us when she married her husband, Ben. They have a son who's 27 together that I have met a few times. The main reason why my wife and her sister have no contact with each other is because Ben and I used to be partners. I left the partnership when I received an offer from the firm I work with currently. Most of the clients followed me to the new firm and Ben accused me of stealing them. My wife knows that I did not steal the clients. Her sister thinks that I did to ruin her husband's career and went no contact with our family. My firm has an opening for an administrative assistant. We kept the posting up for 2 weeks and received 10 applicants. I went through the applicants and saw that my nephew had applied. My in-laws contacted me asking for a favor in interviewing Nephew. I set up a date and time for an interview with Nephew. The interview was scheduled last week and it did not go well. He was 10 minutes late and acted like we were wasting his time. We asked him if he had any questions and they were about the starting pay for the position and when he would start. We told him that we would be in touch regarding the position. We made a decision today and contacted everyone regarding their application status. Nephew was not happy, and my wife has been receiving messages from most of her family. Nephew reached out to me asking why he was not chosen. I was honest with him about why we did not move forward in the hiring process. Her sister reached out to me sending a long email that I was completely in the wrong and making matters worse within the family. Am I the jerk for being honest why I did not choose my nephew for a position? Not the jerk. Frankly, given the history between you and Ben, I'd have been concerned enough that Nephew was just applying so he could spy to not even bother with an interview. As it is, he made the mistake of assuming the job was his no matter what he did. If Mommy would rather validate his entitlement than address his attitude problem before he loses any more opportunities over it, that's not your problem. Follow your schedule. Once upon a time, I was the supervisor for the security team at a small college on the East Coast. When the director of security left, there were 2 people up to replace him, me and a senior supervisor for the company that the college contracted with. He was chosen. Okay, I can live with it. I had very little experience in the field and was only a supervisor because of my military experience. The company gave me a 15% raise to keep me there, which worked. The new director was a very hardworking, well-intentioned idiot. He did work hard, but he had no idea how to manage anything and was more concerned with finding projects that he could put on his resume than with what the team could realistically accomplish. Things that didn't get top billing on a resume didn't get much attention. Like, for example, scheduling. If you've never worked in security, it's a nightmare. No real prerequisites, so you get a lot of random bozos who either can't do the job or just don't want to work. The college was a complicated site, so we got the relatively smart ones, but that wasn't saying much. Schedules went from being done 2 weeks out to 1, then to several days. I'm sure you can see where this is heading. It got to the point where I was taking screenshots of my schedule on my phone twice a day in preparation for the inevitable mess-ups. I started asking him about the schedule, which naturally annoyed him to no end, and the obvious snap response was, "Just check your schedule on the app." I tried pointing out that the schedule had been changing a lot recently, and the response got shorter and ruder. For the sake of perspective, I called him at 8:30 at night once because my schedule had changed since lunchtime to have me in at 5 a.m., and he hadn't bothered to let me know. Then the malicious compliance fairy waved her magic wand, and I heard the angelic chorus. Okie dokie, if you're going to be a jerk about it. On Friday, I noticed that I was not scheduled for the morning shift on Saturday, which I normally covered. I knew we didn't have anyone hired for that shift. I asked the only other person who could work weekend mornings. Nope, he wasn't scheduled, and I had just been yelled at for not following the schedule. And you're darn right, I turned my ringer off before I went to bed. So when I rolled out of bed at 8 the next morning, I had 13 missed calls. Most from ND, but 2 from his senior supervisor, and 1 from middle management at the company office. So ND, being a jerk, called in higher management when he couldn't get a hold of me. So naturally, I called back the most important people first. Why, no, company manager. I have no idea why ND would expect me to be there. I'm very conscientious about my schedule. In fact, let me send you this time-stamped screenshot of the schedule from last night. Well, of course, being the team player that I am, I will be happy to run in to cover the shift that ND had to get up at 5 a.m. for. So ND did himself in, and everyone knew because he called in his boss, and I got to sleep in and still got a half shift of that sweet, sweet overtime. Oh, and ND decided after 6 months that the job was too stressful, and I now hold the position. Incidentally, the first thing I do every week is make sure the schedule is done 2 weeks ahead. My Karen stepdaughter wants to move back in. I'm not having it. My girlfriend, basically wife, we've been together for 11 years, comes to me and says that she wants her daughter to move back in to help her out. She's 21, has 2 kids who are 3 and 1. She's pregnant again and married. She wants to move all of them into the house so they can save to move to a better place because daughter doesn't like where they live. I'm not a kids person. This also involves me packing up my entire man cave of collectibles so they can live in it. I'm the only person working. Oh, and I hate her husband. He's a massive jerk and can't hold jobs longer than a few months while being awful with money. When I voice my concern, my girlfriend tells me all I care about is myself. Never mind, our son doesn't want them to move in either. This is the daughter that has moved out and come back 3 times since she was 16. Each time it's with a guy and more kids, and never ends well. All the guys have been losers, etc. Sometimes I feel like stuff like this will be the end of my relationship. I have a super stressful job. Having a bunch of toddlers and young parents at my home life doesn't sound relaxing. And honestly, yeah, I'm selfish. I'm 41. I thought I was done raising kids. Not the jerk. How are they going to save money for a better place to live if you are the only one working? You're not selfish. They have no discernible plan except moving in with you. OP. Okay, the daughter's husband works, but he's the type that misses lots of days, constantly changes jobs, so very off and on. My brother is like your daughter's husband. From someone who has directly dealt with a person like this for 20 plus years, say no to your girlfriend. If this man is anything like my brother, he will most likely quit his job and mooch off of you until you force him to get a job. He will also probably smoke in your house, disregarding the fact that it's your home. Not to mention, he will probably leave your girlfriend's daughter once the baby is born. Anyways, stand your ground. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. No way would I allow this. If your girlfriend wants to help them out, then maybe she could get a job and help pay for a better place for them. OP. If I really stand up, I'll be leaving. She's the type that the kids should always be able to come back no matter what. Wow. Judgmental much? So what she has a 3 and a 1-year-old at 21? Who are you to judge her lifestyle? Also, judging her partners and their lifestyle choices You're honestly probably the reason she left home so early. I hope her family finds a better place to live than with a controlling jerk like you. You sound just like my dad, who was a straight-up narcissist. He judged me for having kids as a teen too. So to spite him, I'm now a 30-year-old woman with 8 kids and another on the way. My mom tells me how much he freaks out every time I get pregnant again, and I love it. The best part is how much it infuriates him how I don't have to work at all now, thanks to all the benefits I receive for being a single mom. The old man still works in the same factory he's been at for the last 40 years. I hope you end up just as miserable as he is.
Well, doesn't this young lady sound wonderful?
Well, what do you think? Is OB a jerk for not wanting his stepdaughter to move back home with her family or not? Please let us know.
I'd be gone in a heartbeat if Reddit boy tried to pull this crap on me.
My mom wants to invite way too many people to my wedding. From the mom who got a bigger wedding ring because she was jealous of her daughter's engagement ring, I bring you the next installment of Entitled Mothering. My fiance and I have decided to have a small wedding. I say this with quotes because I am Indian and Hindu weddings are usually 300 plus people and last 4 to 5 days. My fiance is American and I am American born and raised. However, I am the first cousin to marry on my mom and dad's side, and it's becoming apparent they don't even want to be in the same building. They're divorced and can't stand each other, but that's another story, I guess. Anyways, when we first got engaged, our limit was 150 people. I was already pushing my fiance because he was dead set on 100, but I knew that was going to be impossible, so I convinced him to raise to 150. Once we told my mom that number, she about spat out her drink.
Is that a hard number?
We tried to say yes. Over the first 4 months of us being engaged, we started talking, and mom was holding paying for the catering over our heads.
If I'm paying for the food, then why does it matter how many people I invite?
That's how it started. We fought every time we talked about it, and I told my fiance to please raise again to 175 to allow my mom to invite her people and I could have some peace. Save the dates have come in, and mom and I finally talk about the list. I already had her down for 60. Names including some of her friends and distant family I hadn't seen for years. This already was more than I had wanted, but I thought she would be happy. As we go through the list, she adds a cousin and wife here, and an auntie and husband there. Final number was 125 people, guys. My fiance and I had 110 people, and I start panicking and telling her to stop adding more people. She goes on a full rant about how I'm the selfish one who wanted to have a wedding that wasn't a destination or get eloped, so I didn't have to invite all these people. What? So just because I won't invite an extra 60 family members I don't even know the names of, we didn't deserve a wedding to celebrate with our closest loved ones? The amount of times I've heard,
"Can we change the venue?"
or,
"Well, it's your fault for choosing too small of a venue."
instead of just respecting our wishes, she's trying to find any loophole to allow more and more people to come or just to insult me until I feel bad enough to let it slide. I also made the mistake of making my sister maid of honor because she basically just backs everything mom says and won't stand up for me at all. Well, I'm not giving her any physical copies, and that's the only way I am hopefully able to control who these get sent to. I don't know. It's been kind of a nightmare with her, and it's really putting a damper on our relationship. Just wanted to vent. Your mom is paying for the food. She's going to feel entitled as long as you allow her to be involved. It's an unfortunate and vicious circle. If you want to limit involvement from your mom, take over the catering cost and limit the guest list to what you can afford using your guest list first.
Aren't big weddings wonderful? You get to spend thousands of dollars throwing a huge party for people who you probably don't even care to see.
I guess it's my business now. I've wanted to post this tale here for a long time. I've started to post it many times, walking away from the computer and giving up each time. Note that like many tales here, many trivial to the story details have been changed. What is important to note is that the way my industry runs is essentially via monthly service contracts with clients. There are 3 major players in this story. We have myself, Egnards, we have the old owner, let's call him Steve, and the new owner, let's call him Kyle. Act 1. Do what you love. As an aimless teenager, I started working for a small business owned by Steve. It turns out I really enjoyed what I did, so slowly over time, my life plan shifted to make sure I could continue to work for Steve for the long term. This included transferring to a local college, and because the business was predominantly run on part-time hours, making sure that any other jobs I had never conflicted with the hours I was expected to work for Steve. Steve was flawed, but overall a good boss who mostly looked out for me. I certainly think over the years he had taken advantage of me in small ways, but looking back, I really have no complaints. The thing is that while when I started working for Steve, the business name recognition was always directed towards Steve. Over the years, it eventually became, go to Engards, he's the best. This got to the point where I do indeed truly believe that if I did not end up working for Steve, it's very likely his business would have been nowhere near as successful as it eventually became. As years went on, it was heavily implied that when Steve retired, the business would go to me. It was never specifically stated, but Steve did have a way about skirting around those types of issues and giving me hope. Act 2. Enter Kyle. About 3 years before lockdown, Steve decided to retire and sell his business. He did indeed fulfill his promise by making a half-asserted attempt to sell it to me at an unreasonable price, but it was very clear he already had another buyer in mind, Kyle. Kyle owned another local business just outside of our market area in the same industry. Because of the way the industry worked, there really wasn't much, if any, overlap in potential customers. But Kyle had a very large amount of money and was willing to buy. What is important to note here is that, again, I do truly believe that if I didn't play ball and agree to work for Kyle, my role was so integral to operation at our business that there was no possible way a sale could go through. Over the course of negotiations, Kyle ended up buying the business and putting me in charge of running the day-to-day, something I was mostly already doing, but with a few more administrative tasks tacked onto it. The thing is, my name was still the name in town, and Kyle made zero effort to ever be on location, so nobody that did business with us ever really knew who Kyle was. Act 3. Kyle's kind of a jerk, and how I learned to stand up for myself. All was well for a while. Kyle would openly talk about me being the head honcho at my location, and mostly left me alone to deal with my clients in the professional and personable nature that I had learned from Steve. Things first came to a head a year before lockdown, when Kyle sent me to an industry conference for 4 days. I would need to take time off from my other job, which I was fine with. At the conclusion of the conference, I put in an hour's request for the hours I spent at the conference, and I was super nice about it. Actually, I should have clocked all hours at the conference each day, but instead did not account for hours for seminars that would help my boss, but were ones I had wanted to attend. The request was denied, and I was told, "Industry conferences are enriching activities. We pay for your admission, but they're on your own time." This took 2 weeks to resolve, but ended with me essentially saying, "Look, I'll still work for you because I love what I do. However, if I don't get paid, I will never go to another one of these conferences again to get new ideas for you." I was immediately paid. I will spare similar smaller stories of that nature, but that slowly started to become the relationship between Kyle and I. Act 4. Lockdown hits. When lockdown hit, our locations were shut down, and for 3 weeks we weren't able to do anything. Meanwhile, our clients were still paying for services, and because Kyle had recently moved to a new client payment portal that I hadn't been trained on yet, I wasn't able to help any clients get their money back. At one point, I messaged Kyle about going virtual and being able to still assist clients and got a very angry text back that essentially said, "Look, you're not the boss. Go forget yourself. You had your chance to be the owner and turned it down. I'm in charge." We did eventually go virtual about a week later. The big problem, of course, being that I would receive daily texts and emails and calls from clients about their memberships and bills, and there was nothing I could do to help them. It was at this point that I knew crap was hitting the fan and I needed to start doing something. So over the course of the next 2 months, I did a couple things. Spent an inordinate amount of time studying the best business structures, communicated with all the other staff at my location about my intentions, continued to give 110% to my clients in a virtual capacity, built a website and social media presence from the ground up. I don't think Kyle was expecting any of this, and he probably didn't also realize that because I often had to do back-end stuff from home, I also had what was, essentially, a little black book of every client, their email addresses and phone numbers. Act 5. Surgical strikes. When everything was ready, I waited very patiently only the end of a service month. As I mentioned, all of our clients had monthly costs, and I didn't want to put anyone out of any part of their costs. On the last weekday of the month, I instructed the staff who would be helping clients that day to tell them to check their emails at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I sent out an email to all active and some non-active clients, as well as a texting service to text everybody. I launched our social media accounts, our website, and had even enlisted a very small amount of trusted clients to spread the word via social media once I gave them the signal. Within 15 minutes of everything, my phone was ringing off the hook. I had 50 plus emails in my inbox from different people, and my Facebook accounts were completely blowing up with local chatter. I also heard from many of these people that were calling Kyle to cancel their service. We hosted a Zoom meeting for all concerned parties and essentially decided to take the weekend to clear up any confusion with the systems and start fresh and open our doors on Monday. Within an hour of everything, Kyle sent out a text blast to every client that they would be shutting their doors effective immediately. At the start of lockdown, we had roughly 50 active clients at the business. On my first day of business, I had signed up 75 active clients, many inactive ones telling me, "Yeah, we stopped doing business with you guys because Kyle was kind of a jerk." What is really important to keep in mind here is that I never wanted to, nor cared to be a business owner. I was very happy working for somebody else as long as I wasn't treated like dirt. Had Kyle treated me even remotely better, the location would have continued to thrive and be a staple in our local community. Kyle chose to be a jerk to try and get quick money and cheat people, and Kyle lost out. We've been in business now for almost 2 years, nearly have tripled Kyle's active numbers, and continue to be a staple in our community. Am I the jerk for disappearing for a night after my husband ambushed me with an unwelcome surprise? I, 29 female, am no contact with my father. We had a really good relationship when I was a kid, but he cheated on my mother, who already had some mental health issues, and was caught in a pretty bad way. The aftermath was horrible. Let's just leave it at that. I had just started college at the time, and basically my whole life fell apart within about a week. My father tried to justify it, and I told him that the options were A, immediately break up with the woman he cheated with and go to therapy with me to find out if I could ever forgive him, or B, get out of my life. He picked A, but didn't actually break up with her. I found out because I expected that, and she sucks at covering her tracks, so I haven't spoken to him in a decade, and he's essentially dead to me. I miss the dad I had in childhood sometimes, but otherwise, I don't regret cutting him off. My older brothers also cut him off shortly after, though one is back in low contact to a degree. My husband comes from a very different kind of family, and the whole situation is mind-blowing for him, largely because his parents are lovely and would never do something like this. He can't imagine things being so bad that you would just never speak to your parent again. We've talked about it a couple of times in the past, and he asked if I would ever reach back out, for closure if nothing else. I said, over my dead body, so I thought he understood. A couple of weeks ago, he asked me to meet him for dinner after work, which we do occasionally. We had just gotten sat down and talked for a minute when my husband said that he had a surprise for me. A minute later, my father walks up to the table. I immediately got up and walked out. They followed me, but I got in my car and left before they could catch up. My phone started ringing, so I turned it off. I checked into a hotel and set up my work laptop and spent the rest of the evening working because that helps when I'm upset. I didn't turn my phone back on until the next morning and saw I had over 50 missed calls and a bunch of texts and DMs from people trying to contact me. My husband has apologized profusely for the whole thing. Evidently, my father reached out to him some time back, and he thought I would change my mind after hearing what he had to say. He was furious with me for just completely disappearing though, because he thought something terrible had happened to me or that I had left him. I told him it served him right for going behind my back and tricking me, but the mutual friends he reached out to see if they had heard from me think I overreacted, and I should have let him know that I was safe. Edit. For those concerned about why I went no contact to start with, the exact situation is beyond the scope of this forum. The cheating was just the match that sparked an already explosive situation that ruined multiple lives and devastated the family to the point that even his own parents disowned him when all the information came out. At the time, I didn't have all of the information that I do now, so reconciliation was still just barely on the table. Just knowing his willing accomplice in the picture as a bare minimum. The woman he cheated with knew the situation from the beginning and contributed greatly to the final outcome being as bad as it was. Not the jerk. And he needs to understand that instead of complaining that you left, he should be grateful that you loved him enough to come back. How dare he? I'd have been gone. Seriously. This is someone who doesn't understand her. He doesn't listen to her. He doesn't believe her. And he doesn't respect her. He disbelieved and dismissed everything she ever said to him about her father and decided he knew better. The ego on his part. The borderline contempt for his wife. He lied to and deceived her for some time, and then he lied to and deceived her about this dinner. He maintained a relationship with her father behind her back. He prioritized her father over his own wife. He knew she wanted nothing to do with him, and he still allowed her father to sneak and creep into her life, and he participated in and facilitated that violation. I know Reddit bros like to whine about how everyone always says to dump him, but for me, there would have been no coming back from this. To me, it's unforgivable. I never could have trusted him again. The disrespect would come across as pathological, and the foundation of the relationship would be irreparably broken to me. I've been no contact with my mom for 13 years, and I cannot even conceive of a world in which my husband would do this to me. OP, obviously not the jerk. I'm deeply sorry. Not the jerk. I probably would have stayed away longer than overnight, though, for that betrayal. Your husband knew full well how you felt about contact with your father, and he betrayed that, and that's really inexcusable in my opinion. He doesn't get to decide that it's time to talk with your father. Tell him if he tries pulling another stunt like that, he may as well call a lawyer, because you'll likely be filing for divorce. That's what I would do. You can't quit on a Friday. This was from my last job, global financial firm with initials MS. I was a contractor in the IT department there for over a year, had a lot of complaints against them. Original manager forgot to file paperwork, costing me a free position, overworked, culture that tried to sell more work as being a sign of praise rather than pay you to do more work, etc. Well, it was time for me to move on. I'd scored a great state job, better pay, great benefits, still work from home, and even then, the office was even closer. All around, they wouldn't be able to compete. They were aware of this for about 2 months, as they almost sank it by dragging their heels on some verifications like employment verification. I even flat out told my manager I'd be leaving at the end of the month. Finally had my official start date. Gave a bit over 2 weeks notice to quit on a Friday so I could start my first day on Monday. Here's where the stupidity begins. This place has a policy to run all software updates on Sunday, so every Monday is horrible. Everything is broken due to poor QA, all hands on deck. If you call off, they are gonna fight you, etc. They like to bully people, and everyone who left had some attempt to get them to stay longer, and it had sadly worked. People don't get how little power they actually have. So my time came. Manager calls me up, goes on and on with BS, tells me it's not proper etiquette to give only 2 weeks notice. Since when? That I should know it takes a minimum of 3 weeks to completely train someone, so I should know they can't replace me in time. You had 1 to 2 months already. And how can I do this to my coworkers? I'm a selfish and bad person, so this doesn't get the reaction or response management wants. Now they bring out policy. They tell me it's against company policy to quit on a Friday. I know this is BS, but they don't really hand out policy books here, and HR is well, for contractors, it's not a thing. Contractors are second-class workers with hardly any rights at all. Still, I'm leaving the company. How does this affect me? I tell them something to the effect that I'm the one quitting. I'm still going to leave on that Friday. Seriously, not sure how this was going in their mind. They doubled down that I had to work that next Monday for them. I think hoping to get their foot in the door, ruin my next job, etc. Well, this isn't working for them now, is it? They are really fuming now. So they give their ultimatum. If I won't work that Monday, then I am to sign out and not clock back in until I have changed my mind. They're looking smug. They're effectively threatening to fire me early, making me lose out on money and stuff. They know we don't have paid time off. Well, I also have no care at this point. My finances are fine. My new job I need a full suit for. I guess I earned myself an unpaid vacation. I log out. They keep looking smug. Leave me with another, remember, don't clock in until you've decided to be reasonable. The next day, I don't log in. A few hours later, I get a call screaming about how I'm late and I've caused so many problems. I cut them off, saying I'm still not coming in Monday, so per our meeting, I'm not going to clock in. Silence. They ask if I'm serious. I ask if they were serious yesterday. They call me a fool and tell me to just come in on Monday like they asked me to. They then wait a moment and ask if I'm going to grow up and come back in. Well, I'm bored at this point and ask if they are going to pay my new rate on Monday. I get a confused no. I tell them they have their answer. They called every day that last week, bouncing between apologies, insults, etc., while still always standing on the, you need to come in on Monday. This was a whole week of them, sometimes multiple days, begging me to come in, even part of the day, to dig them out of holes, but then doubling down that, if you come in, that does mean you're coming back all the way through Monday, right? I had already dropped off their equipment since I didn't need any of it at this point, even if I did finish my week. They even called on Monday to tell me I was fired for not showing up. I still think they thought I was joking or playing hardball for a promo or raise. It's the only reason I have for all of that. Or they really thought I'd throw my new job for them. They had a big focus on company loyalty that a lot of people seem to buy into, so maybe they just assumed I'd be loyal. I did hear my old manager had to fill in for me as they couldn't get anyone to do my shift and my jobs, and that now, months later, my manager and several others quit as everything is buckling. They promised more than they could deliver and drove off experienced imps like me. Am I the jerk for getting offended at my husband's suggestion I only take 2 weeks of maternity leave? I, 25 female, am currently 25 weeks pregnant with my husband, 34 male, and I's first kid. We have been together for 5 years, married for almost 2. Baby is growing on track, we've already painted the nursery, and my mother-in-law is excitedly planning the baby shower. I have a full-time office job while he has been working from home since the first lockdown. We were talking about our parental leaves, and we agreed that we wouldn't take it simultaneously. We were good until he said, "Do you want to do 2 weeks first, then I do mine, then you do 6 weeks after?" I just stood silently staring at him for 5 minutes. I told him I think he's being ignorant and selfish. He said, "What? I don't know how long you need to recover. I don't even know why we're still talking about this." He works for an international company where they get 3 months paid paternity leave. Meanwhile, I work for a small business which only offers 6 to 8 weeks of unpaid maternity leave. He has been anticipating his paternity leave since I got pregnant because he sees it as an opportunity to seriously start looking for another job. He has been with the company for 9 years and has been feeling burnt out. Lately, his frustrations have been compounded by his new manager being difficult. I've been very supportive of his goal of finding a job where he can be fulfilled and appreciated, as I can sense that he's not happy at his job anymore. He also said that his current company will be considering him for a better position once he gets back from his paternity leave, so that gets him kind of excited. We have a 6-figure income combined. I pay the mortgage while he takes care of the other bills. We have money in the bank, stocks, cars paid off. I don't think my maternity leave being unpaid is an issue because my savings could cover the 2 months that I wouldn't get a paycheck. I didn't talk to him after his remark. He went to play video games on his computer while I folded his clothes. I slept on the couch and still have not talked to him at breakfast. He tried talking to me as I was about to leave for work, but I just noped out of the house. I am upset that he doesn't think that I deserve to get some downtime after giving birth to recover and spend time with our kid. I feel like he thinks growing an entire human being inside your body and then having to push that baby out is not a big deal. Maybe because I never complain about anything. I do 90% of the chores around the house, even carrying laundry from our bedroom at the top floor down to the basement to get them washed, then back up the stairs to get them folded and put away. I feel like my in-laws are more concerned about my well-being than he is. My father-in-law even bought us a litter robot, so I won't have to clean after our cats. My family lives a few continents away, so I don't have a huge support system here. Not the jerk. Your husband is woefully mistaken about what is possible during a paternity leave. First off, where I live, what you are getting doesn't even qualify for maternity leave. It's what's considered the medically necessary leave to recover from childbirth. Is your husband even aware that he will be providing full-time care while he's off? Because it seems like he thinks this is a free vacation and not a responsibility. Not the jerk. So you are the one who is going to be having your baby, but you only get 2 weeks to rest? And then he's going to take 3 months of paternity leave and take that time to look for another job? Who's going to look after the baby and take care of the house while you work and he looks for a job and potentially goes on interviews? And why on earth are you folding his clothes while he plays video games? You're going to be a single mother real quick. Am I reading this correctly? Your husband wants you to take 2 weeks off, then he will take off 3 months? And then you will take 6 more weeks after? That can't be right, because it makes absolutely no sense. Whatever is going on here, I'm pretty confident you are not the jerk. OP. Some people here think I haven't tried talking to him about childbirth and stuff like that, but I have. I just didn't talk to him last night and this morning because I was extremely upset. I even bought him a book, which he hasn't even touched. I show him articles from my baby app about baby's developments and changes happening each week. If he doesn't know anything, it isn't from my lack of trying to explain. He didn't even want to read this post when I sent it to him. He's locked himself in the bedroom. I don't know if he's reading it now. Am I the jerk for wanting to split things 3 ways? Background: I'm American, grew up in Oregon, and that is where most of my family is. My roommate is from South Africa. I've known her about 8 years. We live in California. We moved into this house on July 1st, 2021. It was a house that we found together. Prior to this, I was living happily alone with my dog. I moved in with her because she was having difficulty finding and affording a place on her own. House is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Roommate has a baby born in August. She keeps baby's crib in her room, but uses the 3rd room for some baby things. We decided when we moved in that we would keep that 3rd room open as a guest room. 3 weeks ago, she tells me on a Wednesday night her mom is coming to visit from South Africa and will arrive on Saturday. When I asked how long she was staying, she first said that she would be here 3 weeks, but might extend her trip a little. When I told her my brother was supposed to be here for a visit at the end of March, 7 weeks away at the time, she answered that her mom will still be here then. I ask again how long her mom is staying, and she flips out on me, gives me a lot of reasons why she needs her mom here, calls me selfish for even asking, but never answers the question of how long she's staying. Now that my roommate's mom has been here for a few weeks, it is very clear that they plan for the visit to last 4 to 6 months. For example, I've overheard them talking about many things they will be doing this summer. Another example is, the mom told me how she brought 4.5 months supply of her prescription medication and will have to figure out how to refill it here after it runs out. These are just a few examples. There have been many things. I was okay with a 3 to 4 week visit only because her mom was coming from a far away out of the country. I'm not okay with a 4 to 6 month visit. I never wanted to live with 3 adults in this house. In fact, it was something we discussed before moving in when we decided to keep the 3rd bedroom as a guest room. After giving it some thought, I decided to tell my roommate that while she has another adult living here full time, taking up the 3rd bedroom, it's not fair for me to be paying half of the rent and utilities. I proposed that we split things 3 ways while she is here for the next several months. They both flipped out at this suggestion, saying that wasn't the agreement when we moved in together. They called me all kinds of names, basically saying I'm a horrible person. When I brought up how now I can't have any visitors or have my family visit, they both said that because my family is just from Oregon and I was able to see them at Christmas, that I basically don't need or deserve to have my family visits. That because her mom came from far away and they hadn't seen each other in 3 years because of lockdown, that they deserve to spend time together more than I deserve to see my family. Basically, that I can see them another time. Forget them, not the jerk. There's no way I would agree to live with someone's parent for 4 to 6 months, let alone without financial contribution. You asking for financial contribution is more than fair, and to be honest, I'd be looking to involve the landlord or moving out. My flatmate's mom visited for 3 weeks. They had trips away planned, etc. It was so stressful, I basically moved out the last week or 2 and stayed with friends while her mom overwatered all my cacti, never to be recovered. No way could I live with someone else's mom for 4 to 6 months. 2 to 3 weeks is pushing it. She needs to move on. She flat out lied to you about the times. Not the jerk. 4 to 6 months is no longer a visitor. That's solid grounds for your new roommate to cough up 1/3 of the rent. My sister keeps stealing from me, ends up regretting it. Okay, so I, 14, female, have a sister who's 16 who I'll call S. She constantly steals from me and messes up my things. I've tried talking to my parents about it, but they just shrug it off and say that my sister does things like that. It's gotten so bad that I have to hide or move valuable items out of the house in fear that she'll break or steal them. 3 weeks ago, I received money from my aunt and friend for my birthday. I was excited because I've wanted AirPods for a while now, and I finally had enough money to get them. I kept the money in a box and put it in my drawer. About a week ago, I wanted to go to the gas station, so I went to get the money, but when I checked, it wasn't there. I went and asked my mom if she had seen it, to which she replied yes. She told me that my sister went snooping in my room and wanted the money, and my mom didn't have the heart to say no, so she let her have it. I went to my sister's room and demanded she give me my money back. She told me that she had already spent it and that I should have hidden it better if I didn't want it to be stolen. I was livid. I stormed to my room and stayed there for the rest of the day. 2 days ago, while out shopping with my aunt, she asked if I had gotten the AirPods that I had been wanting. I told her no, and that mom allowed sister to take the money I was going to use to buy it. My aunt was furious and called my mom, confronting her about it. My aunt berated my mom and said I could stay the night with her. When I got home to pack my things, mom was furious and threw money at me, asking if I was happy now that I made sister feel bad. I ignored her, grabbed my things, and left. While at my aunt's place, I received many nasty texts from family members saying I was in the wrong. My dad told me that he didn't agree with what my mom and sister did, but I didn't have to expose them to my aunt. I've been feeling extremely guilty, and I've been wondering if I was in the wrong. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister is a thief, and both of your parents are enablers. I'm glad you have an adult who is treating you well. Not the jerk. I would see if you could stay with your aunt longer. Show her the text messages. It was your aunt's gift to you. I'd tell her to go to the police about theft. It was her money after all. That is actually a good idea. Next time your sister steals a large sum of money from you, record your mother and sister when they tell you that your sister stole it. Then go to the police and report her. Maybe getting some consequences for her behavior would be beneficial for her. Not the jerk. Good for you that your aunt has taken you in. Your mom has clearly a favorite daughter, and sadly it's not you. As long as your sister doesn't learn boundaries from your mom, she's going to continue and surely will have it hard in life when she has to learn she doesn't get everything she wants, and there are actually consequences for her behavior. Your father knew of the behavior of sister before, and as well, he hasn't done anything. I bet he wouldn't have done something now again. He can't stand up to your mother, and exposing this behavior was the only thing you could do to make them realize their actions are wrong. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you expose your family for stealing from you or not? Please let us know.
Exposing would be an understatement. You don't even want to know what I'd do to them.
I sent my cousin the bill for my kid's birthday cake after her kid ruined it. We recently threw my 5-year-old a birthday party. He hasn't had a real birthday party since he was 2 years old due to lockdown, so this was the first one he'd actually remember. We wanted to make it special, so we invited all of our closest friends, family members, and their kids. One of my cousins, a single mom, has a very unruly 6-year-old. He's loud, disobedient, and a nightmare in public. When it came time to blow out the candles and cut the birthday cake, he came and stood directly next to my son. I anticipated what was going to happen next and asked my husband to stand behind this kid in case he tried to pull anything. After we sang, this kid kept trying to blow out the candles. My husband kept blocking him and pulling him back, and we could tell the kid was getting frustrated. Eventually, my son blew out the candles, and the kid absolutely lost it. He threw a tantrum and slammed his entire arm into the cake, knocking it into the table. It was so awkward, everyone just gasped and got quiet. My son looked up at us, and I could tell he was about to start crying. In an effort to not cause a bigger scene, my husband picked him up and whispered to him that we had another special cake just for him. We didn't, and he seemed to calm down. Meanwhile, his cousin was still standing there screaming and crying, his arm covered in cake. His mom was nowhere to be seen. I walked him over to the sink and washed him off and quietly told him that he shouldn't have done that to the cake and that he should apologize to his cousin for what he did. He screamed,
No!
in my face and then ran away. My husband ended up running out to buy a sheet cake that we cut and served to everyone. I spoke to my cousin after the party about what happened since she wasn't in the room, and she brushed it off, saying,
Kids will be kids.
I completely disagree. I've been to plenty of birthday parties where the other kids let the birthday boy or birthday girl have their moment. I suggested that she pay for the ruined cake, and she looked at me like I was crazy. I told her how important it was to us that this birthday be special to my son, since it would be the first one he remembered, and now all he would remember was that his cousin ruined his special moment. She got extremely defensive and refused to pay for anything. She then accused me of acting like the perfect mom and began to list the ways in which I was in fact not perfect. It was a hurtful conversation and we haven't spoken since. I sent her the bill for the ruined cake and she has not paid us. I actually feel she should pay for both cakes since her kid is the reason we had to get a new one, but I didn't go that far. My husband thinks she'll never pay us and that I should drop the issue at this point. He says that since she's a single mom, it's probably hard on her and we should cut them both some slack. I understand that, but I feel like that's just letting her and her son off the hook, and this will lead to even bigger problems in the future if we don't hold them accountable. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk, but you'll never get your money, and I think you made the point. The kid is a jerk because the parent is a jerk. No longer invite them to any parties and enjoy your immediate family because they seem nice. Not the jerk. I agree. You will never get your money back, and your only way to go from here is to cut her out completely because her son and her bad parenting will only get worse. Not the jerk, but obviously she's not going to pay for the cake. Don't invite her to any more occasions or events and just write her off. Her son is going to have massive problems in the future no matter what. It's not your responsibility, nor do you even have the ability to prevent that. Hounding her about paying for the cake isn't going to make any difference at all, except make both of you feel more anger and resentment. Believe me, when your son is older, he's going to remember, oh yeah, I remember jerk cousin ruined my cake that year. I wonder if he's out of jail yet. Bring down all the servers during the day? Why not? At the height of the subprime mortgage market, around 2007, when all it took to qualify for a home loan was that you were breathing, I reluctantly took a job with a mid-sized lender that had the headquarters in one state and a large office in another, where I was. We had very recently combined two local offices and moved into a shiny new building we had all to ourselves. In order to keep the servers up during a power outage, we had a massive battery backup array. They wanted these servers to remain powered for a minimum of 12 hours in case the power went out. We had 32 batteries daisy-chained together with one unit serving as the control unit. When we moved this massively heavy battery array from the old building to the new, getting it all reconnected was one of my duties. I got them all stacked and connected and turned on. Before we had connected the servers, I made sure they were all aligned properly and at one point gave one a little bump to move it just a bit and the whole thing shut off. After double-checking everything, I concluded we had a bad controller that could continue to present intermittent problems. The VP of IT, we'll just call him VP, had flown out to oversee the move. The guy was just a kid of 23, and if I recall correctly, he was the son of a friend of the founders. He was a smart guy, just inexperienced, and had an ego that far exceeded his skills and experience. So I told him, "Hey VP, there's a fault in the battery array. If you bump it a little, it goes off." VP replies, "Don't worry about it, Jake. Just get it up and running so we can get the servers connected." So I did. This was not the malicious compliance. 3 months down the road, everything in the new office is humming along and it's time to catch up on lingering tasks. On the phone with VP and he says, "Jake, go reconfigure the controller card for the battery array with the IP address I just emailed you." You guessed it, cue malicious compliance. I knew what was very likely to happen and I purposely did not remind VP of the instability of the controller card. So after the call, I grabbed a serial cable and my laptop and went down to the server room. The moment I plugged that cable into the controller card of the battery array, the entire thing went down like a drunk on an icy sidewalk. Normally, this wouldn't be a huge issue, but this was a mortgage company and it was early afternoon on the last day of the month. Interest rates had been locked and loans had to be closed. I powered the battery array back on, fired up the servers, collected my laptop, and walked out. As I came up the back stairs into the main office area, it was pandemonium. No one quite understood what had happened yet. The VP called me and asked what had happened. I replied, "I only did what you told me to do. I went to reconfigure the controller card for the battery array and then reminded him that I had previously reported it as faulty." I, of course, got the blame for the whole debacle. Hundreds of loans didn't get closed that day. The predatory lender lost out on a lot of money and I was about to be fired. When I got back to the tech room, I started copying all my files, etc. to a CD because I knew what was going to happen. I also had a talk with the VP of lending and explained what really happened. At the end of the workday, I was brought into the conference room by HR. The VP was on speakerphone. "Jake, this is all your fault, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to let you go." I was stoic in my reply. "No, this is your fault. I warned you before that the controller was bad." He said, "You knew it was the last day of the month. You should have known to wait the next day," and proceeded to start yelling and screaming at me because he had to deflect because HR was right there. I stopped him in the middle of seething and said, VP, you fired me, right?" He shot back, "You're darn right I did." So I stood up, took a calm, deep breath and said, "Then I don't need to sit here and listen to you," and I walked out, leaving my laptop behind. I could hear the speakerphone jumping off the conference room table as he screamed at me to come back. I stopped, laughed, and kept on walking. Best day of work I ever had. Edit. For those that said I should have reminded him, it wouldn't have mattered a bit. He dismissed pretty much everything I ever said to him that wasn't following orders, and if something went wrong, he was never to blame. He was arrogant and inexperienced and never took advice. Also, the company as a whole was highly predatory, something I didn't know when I started. Am I the jerk for storming out after I didn't like the birthday present I was given? I, 20 female, recently turned 20 and had a party to celebrate turning 20. It was a small gathering at my favorite sushi restaurant with only my immediate family and a few friends. Everything was going well until it came time for the presents. You see, in my family, there's this tradition that when the firstborn turns 20, they are given this pocket watch that was owned by my great-grandfather. When our country was still colonized by the British, he, my great-grandfather, was taken in by some missionaries and became a teacher. As a teacher, he was super instrumental to the community and partly funded the first Black-owned school there. He became headmaster, and as a thanks, the community chipped in to get him a pocket watch. When my grandfather turned 20, he was given the watch, and it became a tradition. As per tradition, I was expecting to get the watch. I had even made an effort of hinting how I wanted a watch for the whole year prior. Among the presents, I saw this small box and got excited thinking it was the watch. The watch came in this wooden casing with a velvet lining inside, and it was about the same size as the box I saw. I made a deliberate choice to open that box last to make sure the night ended on a highlight. When it came time to open the box, it was a watch, but a digital one. It was a good watch, to be honest, but it wasn't the watch. My dad was excited as he went on prattling about the features of the watch. It could count steps, connect to my phone via Bluetooth, control music, measure my heart rate, etc. While he was talking, I burst into tears and left the table running. My dad follows and asks why I was sad, and I said I wanted the watch, the one that belonged to my great-grandfather. He said he wanted to give it to my younger brother, who is 12, since he's a boy. If he gives it to me, it will leave the family since I'll get married to a man and join his family. This came as a blow since I've always been closer to my dad than my brother was, and my brother isn't even interested in the watch like I have been my whole life. We got into an argument, and it ended with him saying my immaturity over such a small matter is why he wouldn't have given the watch to me even if I was a boy. I left after he said that. That was 2 weeks ago, and we haven't spoken since. So, am I the jerk? Edit. It's always been the firstborn who gets it, but the firstborns have always been men since the tradition started. I'm the first female firstborn. I suppose I shouldn't have stormed out. I'm 20 now after all. I was super overwhelmed by my feelings. I'm prone to tears, always have been, but I should have calmed myself, especially since it was a public place. Not the jerk. Your father is passing you over for an important family heirloom because you're not a boy. I don't blame you for getting upset. I honestly don't get how people are saying not the jerk. She's not entitled to the watch. You're the jerk big time. Because Reddit is an echo chamber of entitled jerks who have no experience in the real world or in a functioning society. They would call this horrible if the roles were reversed, except they would still say the man is the jerk for trying to take away a female heirloom. It's tragic, but I don't know what you really expect. You're the jerk. I know I'm gonna get downvoted to oblivion, but hear me out. In my family, there's a tradition where the ancestral jewelry is passed down only to the women of the family, including rings which can be worn by both men and women. But no one would say that's wrong, it's just how it is. I believe that's the same reason your dad has. You're the jerk. Grandfather to son. It would be like your brother getting upset for not getting your grandmother's jewelry. I, male, wouldn't dream of getting my mom's wedding ring, but my father's watch? It would be an insult not to. She made it clear that she wanted it. He should have discussed it with her at home beforehand if he wasn't going to give it to her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her dad? Please let us know.
Yowza, this one's spicy. I can't wait to read the comments our viewers think of it.
Entitled Grandpa thinks we should take his 5 grandkids to Disneyland. My older sister, Pam, and her second husband, Jerry, not real names, have custody of Jerry's 5 grandkids. Jerry's son and daughter-in-law are currently serving prison terms for white-collar crime. The kids range in age from 15 down to 5. Pam had 2 daughters from her first marriage. I was very involved in my nieces' lives while growing up. My husband and I don't have any kids, and we often took the girls together and separately on trips, amusement parks, camping, age-appropriate concerts, and other things. The girls were close in age and had similar interests, so it made things easy to take them places together. Unfortunately, the younger of my nieces passed in an automobile accident when she was 18. The older niece now lives over 1,000 miles away, so we don't see her or her only kid very often. At a recent family gathering, one of Jerry's youngest grandkids came up to me and asked me when I was going to take her and her siblings to Disney World. I told her she must have mistaken me for another person because I wasn't going to Disney World, so I wouldn't be taking her and her siblings there. She ran off to Pam and started to cry. Later, Pam and Jerry asked to speak with my husband and I privately. They wanted to know why we don't take Jerry's grandkids on trips like we used to take my nieces. Turns out they had told the kids that we would take them all to Disney World sometime. Needless to say, my husband and I were shocked. We never took my nieces to Disney World. Most of our trips with them were in our home state or the neighboring states. Plus, we were younger, and there were only 2 of them, so we could keep up with them rather easily. Not to mention, the cost of taking 2 kids is much less than taking 5. My husband and I have been cutting back on expenses and expenditures because we don't know what will happen with the economy, and we don't want to jeopardize our own retirement plans. Also, we are basically strangers to Jerry's grandkids. We didn't meet any of them until Pam and Jerry took custody of them last year, and this family gathering was the first time that we've met all 5 of them. Jerry said that they expected us to take the grandkids on trips like we had taken Pam's daughters when they were kids, because we have no grandkids, just like we had no kids. So we should be happy to have this opportunity to play like we have grandkids. Then we said we would pass on this opportunity because of the reasons mentioned above, and these are Jerry's grandkids and in no way related to either my husband or myself. Jerry blew up and called us selfish and said that they had expected us to help out when they took custody of the kids, and he stormed off. Am I the jerk for bringing my entire family to the restaurant where my girlfriend was working as a server in order to meet her? I, 24 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 26 female, for several months. She works as a server at a local popular restaurant. My family has been, for a few weeks now, asking to meet her. I have 2 older sisters who are 31 and 27, as well as 3 nieces and a mother and father who are both in their late 50s. My girlfriend doesn't have a good relationship with her own parents and has expressed envy over me having a good relationship with mine. I've asked her a few times to come with me to meet my family, but she's always had an excuse on why she couldn't. So anyway, last weekend I brought my whole family, my parents as well as my sisters and their husbands and their kids, to her restaurant. I requested a table in her section. When she saw us, I could tell she was taken aback, but she did her job well and even took the time to talk to us all and to get to know my parents, sisters, brother-in-law, and nieces as well as she could while still doing her job and taking care of her other customers. Upon leaving, my entire family expressed that they really liked her, that I was lucky, and that they were glad to have met her. They also left her a huge tip. I thought the whole thing was fine. However, after she got off her shift, my girlfriend texted me and said, "Thanks a lot, you jerk." I called her and she went off on me about how I shouldn't have blindsided her by bringing my whole family and how she should have had the chance to meet my family on her terms. I responded that she didn't seem to want to meet my family whenever I brought it up, so that if it were to ever happen, this was the way I'd figured out. But she said that what I did was wrong and that she had to give my family special attention at the expense of her other tables, which I think wasn't true. Maybe I shouldn't have sprung my whole family on her in the way I did, but it went well, and I am kind of annoyed that she can't see that. You're the jerk. The update will be that she dumped you and that you're surprised. She's right. You blindsided her with something that she's having difficulty coping with. Instead of easing her into another possible meeting scenario, offering only meeting one of your sisters at a time, for example, and respecting whatever decision she made, you show up with your whole family at her place of work. So not only are you ignoring her opinions, but you're also putting her in a tough time at work. Please update us that she broke up with you. Not only at her work, but in a situation where she literally has to serve them. You're the jerk. And it's not even as if he turned up with just his parents or just one of his siblings, for example. He blindsided her with his parents, his siblings, their spouses, and their kids. The whole shebang. You're the jerk, OP. Big time. I will probably get downvoted for this, but I don't care. OP, you are absolutely not the jerk. If she was uncomfortable with meeting your family, that isn't a healthy relationship to begin with. OP also never states that she indicated she was uncomfortable with meeting them, just that she envied the better relationship. And on top of that, she only ever gave excuses to OP as to why she couldn't see them. As a reasonable boyfriend, you are not at fault for trying to do something fun for your girlfriend while she's working. And if she didn't appreciate it, she could have very easily explained why she didn't appreciate it instead of coming out the gate with name-calling. Maybe people here are just desensitized to men being treated more like crap than women, but if this was the reverse, everyone would have crapped on the guy if he reacted like this. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not helping my sister to remove something that insults her? My sister cheated on her husband. Her husband is a restaurant owner. He has one of those quirky restaurants with funny food names. It's all one-liners. I'm not a fan of it because I find it embarrassing, but the food is good. Once the divorce went through, he added a menu item along the lines of Sarah's cheating chicken. My sister's name is something super generic. I know like 19 Sarahs. A friend sent Sarah the menu and she was outraged. She came to me to ask me to help her take it down. I'm not a lawyer and don't plan to be, but I've taken corporate law courses and have friends that are lawyers. But I don't want to help her. In my personal opinion, she deserves this and I don't want to get involved. The only ones that would know who this is about already know the story, so there's not really a case for defamation. There are too many Sarahs. The only thing we could do is send a cease and desist letter, but that's not legally binding and it's a hassle. I told my sister so and she got mad at me and told our parents, who say that what her ex is doing is worse than what she did. Am I the jerk? The fact that she claims this is worse than her cheating on her ex-husband tells you that she's going to present herself as the victim regardless of what you do, so you might as well stick to your guns. I'd go buy one of those meals and encourage the ex, not the jerk. Also, does she know about the Streisand effect? The more you try to censor something, the more it becomes. This is a win-win for the poor ex-husband. Either he gets a laugh, or he has to take it off the menu, but the entire town knows that his ex-wife Sarah cheated on him and got upset when he called her out, even though he will definitely name something else the ex-wife lawsuit lasagna or the cheating ex-wife Streisand salad. Am I the jerk for embarrassing my mother-in-law in front of the family? My mother-in-law, Barbara, is a conservative woman. She tends to be very critical of me. She always finds flaws in me and is always trying to fix them. Example, her response to me dyeing my hair was that I committed a sin by changing God's chosen hair color for me. She once threw away some of my clothes, saying her son shouldn't see them because it's sinful. We were already married, by the way. During engagement period, she made a weekly reminder of me not to get pregnant or else she and her family will disown the baby and cut me off. Recently, she started making comments about how bad my face looks. She keeps sending me boxes and boxes of this tea she recommends since she's big on herbals and essential oils, basically forcing me to try it, although I already told her that it makes my stomach hurt and causes me to throw up. Yesterday, I visited my in-laws alone for lunch since my husband, Tommy, had work and couldn't come. Barbara examined my face from across the table while we were eating and was like, "Oh, looks like the tea has finally yielded some pretty good results. Your face no longer looks pale and outworn like before." Everyone stopped eating and stared at me. I felt so embarrassed and quite shocked that she had called my face that. I leaned back and told her, "No, Tommy's actually been helping me de-stress every night in his own special way. Wink, wink." She must have figured out what I meant, and so did the others because they started laughing, and she literally widened her eyes in shock. She looked very offended but said nothing, just said, "Excuse me," and walked out. Silence then took over, but later Barbara called me, lashing out about the disrespectful and inappropriate things I said in front of the family. I said that I was just letting her know her tea did nothing and told her the reason my face was blooming. She shamed me for talking about her son like that and said I clearly am taking advantage of him. I guaranteed that I wasn't taking advantage, but she kept berating me, then wrapped up with a request for an apology after I offended her in front of the family. Don't know if I messed up here. Am I the jerk for my response? Am I the jerk for no longer allowing my sister to work in my daycare after what she did? Hi, I'm a 32-year-old widow. Have been for 3 years. I struggled a lot financially. I didn't get help from my family because they claimed they can't, so I decided to start a home daycare. It's been open for 7 months now. My friend was able to get me more clients via Facebook. Thank goodness my business is growing and I've made quite a lot of friends who are moms and also established good reputation since my daycare has been recommended. My sister, 26, is unemployed, didn't find a job yet and had rent to pay for her and her boyfriend. My parents suggested I let her come work with me at my daycare and accepted since she has experience in the past. I agreed to let her come and earn her living. She got along with the other workers and things were going fine, until she came to me asking about a specific kid that comes to our daycare. He's 4, very well behaved for his age. I was confused after she complained about him. She said she saw his dad come over to pick him up and didn't feel comfortable when she saw him because he's a police officer, and she had an unpleasant incident with the police because of something her boyfriend did that she needed therapy for and struggled a lot from. She wanted me to let the kid go and tell the parent to look for another daycare. He usually arrives at 3 p.m. to pick the kid up. From what I understand, his wife's sick. I refused. I've no good reason to let the kid go. My sister refused to drop it and started being mean to the dad. It was unprofessional of her. I told her she either be respectful or I won't have her work with me anymore. 2 days ago, she sent an email to the dad telling him we won't be welcoming his kid at the daycare anymore. He came to talk to me and I was livid when I saw the email. He asked why and talked about his kid wanting to stay because he's friends with other kids. Talked about not being able to find a daycare closer than ours. I lashed out at my sister and I told her she's no longer able to work at the daycare because of her behavior. We got into an argument and she left after saying I was being unsupportive and inconsiderate. My parents called me saying I shouldn't have kicked out my sister and I'm now causing her to lose her apartment. They argued I have no regard for my sister's trauma and I should have let the kid go and supported her because she's my sister. Everyone shamed me and claimed I had messed up priorities. I felt I was in the wrong for letting her struggle now without a job, but I have no reason to let go of the kid as well. He wears a uniform. My aunt suggested that I ask him to get someone else to come and pick up his kid, or at least I let her leave before 3 p.m. and arrive a bit late in the morning, but others would notice the difference in treatment at the daycare. I understand that there are parents struggling, and I do all I can to help out and be supportive. Yes, she's my younger sister, but treating people like that was unprofessional of her. One thing to clarify, my sister's boyfriend is in no contact with my family due to issues. However, they said they want to support my sister and be in contact with her and support her, although they don't have a relationship with her boyfriend. That's why they keep pressuring me to help and support her. Entitled Pool Mom's Plans Backfire. This happened in late July of 2019. Me, 17, female, and my family, what I call my family and parents' friends' family that I grew up with, were at a pool at a super hot day. It was midday and the pool was packed. For some background, we were at a campground with 2 pools, so the pool I was in was filled with older kids and adults, while the other one was for the kids and the toddlers. The larger pool had been crowded by multiple families and all the tables near the pool were filled. I had been floating on a pool tube in the pool, watching my friends play around me and casually listening into my parents and their friends' conversations. I was just vibing when I noticed some commotion coming from my left side. I saw maybe 6 boys, aging from 10 to 14, playing with the water basketball set, the ones where you shoot from inside the pool. They were just being kids, and every once in a while, the ball would roll away from the pool and one of them would jump out to get the ball. It just so happened that the ball had rolled in the direction of our entitled parent. Entitled parent was with her 3 little kids. She started yelling at the boys. It's been a while since this happened, but I'll try to be as accurate as possible. Karen:
Hey, quit playing so rough around my kids. You're making too much noise and getting my stuff all wet from your splashing, etc.
She went on this rant for a while, yelling at the boys for playing in the pool. She cried about how her baby was getting splashed and how rude the boys were. At this point, the boys had all stopped to watch her in shock. I saw one of the boys look like he was about to cry. This is when I stepped, or floated in. Me: "Excuse me, ma'am." Her gaze turned to me, and if looks could kill, I would have combusted then and there.
What?
Me: "The boys are just playing. Let them be. Your kids are nowhere near them and aren't bothered at all. This is the camp pool. Let the kids play and leave them alone." Did I mention her own kids were on the other side of the pool splashing each other? She got red in the face and grumbled at me to shut up, but didn't really do much. The boys thanked me and I thought the incident was over. Or so I thought. About 5 minutes later, I saw her still glaring at me, but I did my best to ignore her. I saw her skirt and walked over to her kids. She whispered to them something. They got super excited and started to run at me. I was slightly confused until I realized they weren't stopping. They ran at me and launched themselves into the pool to splash me. Now I have glasses and I'm pretty much blind without them, so I wear them in the pool with me if I'm just floating, like I was that day. Once I cleared the water from my glasses, I saw the kids giggling in the water, running to the ladder, and then the Karen just giving a smug grin. Then I had an idea. I grinned right back at her and then turned to her kids with a laugh and said with a smile, "Me, is that the best you got? I barely noticed any splash. Hit me again." The kids lit up with joy and quickly scrambled out of the pool and tried to splash me again. Each time I would laugh and encourage them to try again. This quickly turned into all the kids in my area trying their hardest to make the biggest splash and me ranking each splash. I will cherish the face the entitled parent gave me when she realized her plan of messing with me completely backfired and how she couldn't stop what was happening without her upsetting her kids. It was glorious. Karen threatens me with child support. I laugh in her face. The title makes me sound like the biggest jerk in the world, but hear me out. I, 35 male, have 4 kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 14, all to my ex-wife Clara. I have 2 girls and 2 twin boys who are 10. I love my kids more than life. I work full-time, so my kids live with my ex, although sometimes they will come to my house after school and I will drop them off the next morning on my way to work. My kids come to my house almost every weekend, except for when they stay at grandparents' or friends' houses. My ex doesn't have a very good job. She's a cashier, and her boyfriend works at KFC. I know money is tight for them, so I often send the kids home with snacks for school. I buy them most of their clothes and a lot of extra things that they want, like jewelry, phones, PlayStations, etc. Well, the other day, Clara called me asking if we could meet up for lunch. As soon as I got there, she got straight to the point, saying she expected $500 in child support every week or she's taking me to court. I laughed at her and she called me an arrogant deadbeat and walked out. Although I do have a good paying job and I could pay her, it's the principle of it. If she had just told me that the money was tight, I would have said of course and chipped in. But seeing as she demanded it, I don't want to. My eldest daughter is asking me to because she doesn't want her mom to make sure I don't see my kids anymore. But to be honest, I don't think she stands a chance in court. My parents and sister told me I am a huge jerk for not only freaking out my daughter, but not paying Clara when she needs it the most. So, am I the jerk? Update. These comments are making some good points, but I'm awfully confused now. I've never thought about why there was never a plan in place. I just signed the papers and it never really got brought up again. When we first divorced, I asked her what custody was going to look like and she just said, "Don't worry about it." Before she got her job, I was paying around $100 every second week, but when she got the job, she told me that the money made her feel like she was dependent on me. But there was never actually an order in place. I just never thought about it. Is there someone I should go to look at things and see what I should do? I think you should go to a court so a judge can decide a fair amount of child support for the kids. It's about their well-being, not yours or their mother's. Go to court to figure out how much to give your kids the best life possible. You're the jerk. 1. Your ex never should have involved a kid in an adult situation. That had to be said first. Your daughter should not be worried about this. 2. Your ex is raising 4 kids the majority of the time. That's a lot of money being spent on them. You said yourself she doesn't have a good job and struggles. Why would you want your kids to live in a home where there is financial instability? 3. You said you can afford $2,000 a month in child support, but flat out refused because you didn't like the way she broached the subject. That alone makes you a jerk. If you are so convinced she doesn't stand a chance in court, then take her to court to settle custody. Oh wait, you're perfectly happy letting her do the majority to raise the kids while you just have visits, but you don't want to have to pay for that. 4. You'll buy them clothes and things to play with, but what about daily food, electricity, grooming supplies, laundry supplies, school lunches, water? The list goes on and on and on. It adds up fast. Pay your fair share for your kids. If you think $2,000 a month is too much, then either negotiate with her on what you feel is fair or run it through the court system and let them decide what's fair. 5. Grow up and stop acting like your ex has to come to you on a bended knee in order for you to be a darn father. Edit. Thank you for all the awards. They're my first. I also want to say I don't think this guy is necessarily a bad guy. I just don't think he is thinking things through all of the way. Karen raises my rent, so I move out. For context, I, 22 female, and Jay, 32 female, moved into a house together about 2 years ago. Her name is on the lease, and she is technically renting me and her brother and his friend, both 36 male, rooms in this house. The two guys downstairs are only there for 4 days a month due to their jobs, and she charges them half as much as me for rent. They also use the full-sized garage in the back to store things. For the last 2 years, Jay and I have lived together semi-peacefully. She's quite messy, and due to my mental health, messes causing worse anxiety and depression, I tend to clean up a lot after her. She also has 2 dogs and a cat. She asks me to feed and let out her dogs on a regular basis. Her dogs will sometimes get into the garbage, or her cat will go to the bathroom downstairs, and Jay expects the first person to see the mess to clean it up, even though it's from her animals. I also have a small room that barely fits my bed, while Jay has a bedroom and a spare room to herself. The boys have a whole basement and the garage to themselves. Now to the issue that broke the last straw for me. Jay gets our hydro and electricity bill every 2 months, and for the last billing period, she got a huge bill. It's winter, and we do live in northern Canada, so it can get quite cold. I was also gone on vacation for 3 out of the 8 weeks that this bill was covering. Jay has been complaining about how expensive utilities are and how outrageous this is for her to pay all of this. I pay her rent for March a few days early, so she has time to e-transfer rent to the actual owner of the house. I sent her an extra $100 because I felt bad about the utilities, and after she received it, she texted me and asked for an extra $150. So $250 on top of my normal rent. Jay only pays about $100 in rent and then covers the utilities. That was our verbal agreement 2 years ago. But now, all of a sudden, the utilities should be my responsibility too. She's making me feel like a freeloader that costs her so much money. My friend just bought a house and offered to let me move in. So last night, I gave Jay my notice and told her I would be out of here at the end of March. I'm actually moving out next week because I cannot stand to be here any longer. I feel like I'm unwanted in my own space now. Now Jay is upset with me because I'm putting more of a financial burden on her, but my friend offered me a cheaper rent and won't charge me for utilities out of the blue. My friend is also much cleaner and has been a huge emotional support as I've been living with Jay and trying to keep the house functional. So, am I the jerk for moving out and putting financial stress on Jay? Not the jerk. Get out of there now. It seems like she's taking advantage of you. You just got a better offer. Not your responsibility to make her life easier at your own expense. Am I the jerk for refusing to answer to a nickname I don't like? I, 28 female, was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with, "I'm my name, but you can call me nickname." None of my coworkers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, who's 25, the niece of Jeff, who's in his 50s, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave, both in their 50s, co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months, she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way, even when I knew she really needed my help with something. She would call my desk phone and say, "Hey Bessie." I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description and threatened to stop helping them unless she used my preferred nickname. Friday, she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design, but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-along voice over and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other coworkers got annoyed, most telling her to stop, and one, Lisa, who's 43, telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused, and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder until Dave barged in. He had been on a conference call with an important client and could hear yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me a jerk for getting her in trouble, and called me Bessie again for good measure, just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the jerk for never helping Megan, and that if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago. But because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. So Reddit, am I the jerk? You're not the jerk. You established a boundary, and her determination to break it is going to keep getting her into trouble. My entitled neighbors stole my garage twice. I live in the northeast of England, and I'm originally from Wales. I've owned a house in Wales I've been renting out for the last 10 years. Everything has been super smooth until a year ago. The tenant stopped paying rent, made multiple promises to pay, etc. In the end, I got so frustrated, I decided to sell the place. I cut my losses on the outstanding rent, circa £3,000, and told the tenant if he left by certain date, I'd write off the rent. Tenant goes over the deadline by a couple of weeks, but ultimately leaves. However, the house is in a terrible condition. The tenant had painted many of the walls bright orange and had got this paint everywhere, including the carpet and skirting boards. The oven had half-cooked rotten food. He had been too lazy to put rubbish in the outside bin, so simply threw it in the shed. Anyway, a bit of a side story, but for context, I live 6 hours away, but my mom and stepfather live 30 minutes away. I've decided to sell, but of course I can't sell the house in its current state. My mom has generously offered to help, and we set a date for me to come back down to start the work. We order a skip, etc. 2 solid days' work later, the place is looking much better. It's not going to win House of the Year, but enough to sell. One of the issues is that we can't seem to get the garage key to work. My stepfather promises to come the following week and drill the lockout. Fast forward to the following week, and my stepfather is in the process of drilling the lockout when he's interrupted by a neighbor who we will call Entitled Neighbor. Entitled Neighbor. "Excuse me, can you please stop doing that? You're damaging my garage." Stepfather. Actually, this garage belongs to my stepson who's selling this house." Entitled Neighbor. "Well, I've been using this garage for the last 12 months, so he has no right." Stepfather doesn't know what to say. Turns out that the entitled neighbor noticed the tenant wasn't using the garage, so drilled out the locks, swapped a new lock, and started using it. When it was finally opened, it was full to the brim with his stuff. He didn't think anyone would notice. I find out the information and call him, telling him he has 24 hours to empty the garage and replace the lock. He can't do it within 24 hours apparently, but apologizes and promises to drop the new keys through the letterbox in a few days. It's annoying, but luckily it's all working out, and I don't want to cause too much hassle with the neighbor. My mom visited the house the following week, picked up the key, opened the garage, and yes, it was now empty. Job done. Fast forward 6 months. House is sold, arranging key handover, etc. However, I get a text from the new owner the following day. Under the sale contract, it's my responsibility to ensure the house and any buildings are empty for the sale. Otherwise, I can be liable for costs, etc. Straight away, I know what's happened and call the entitled neighbor. Turns out he kept a spare key on the lock change. Yes, in hindsight, I should have had my own lock, but I didn't think anyone would be that stupid. He noticed no one was using the garage, so he decided to start using it again. I was furious. He couldn't understand why I was so mad. "But you weren't using it, so what's the big issue?" "Well, did you ask my permission?" "No." "Does the garage belong to you?" "No." "What do you expect?" I gave him 1 hour to clear the garage before I call the police and order a clearance company to empty the garage. The sheer cheek of the man. Anyway, all sorted now, garage is empty, locks have been changed, and having sold the property, the entitled neighbor is now someone else's problem. Am I the jerk for not waking my boyfriend, which made him late to his first day at a new job? I, 28 female, have lived with my boyfriend, 30 male, for 3 years now. When I first stayed the night and he overslept, I woke him up. He woke up in a bad mood, and after a big fight, made it absolutely clear that I should not wake him up even if I knew he would be late to meeting the Pope. His words. After I calmed down, I wrote a contract that said I would never wake him up under any circumstances short of an emergency as long as he never blames me for oversleeping. He laughed and signed it. I kept it with my important documents. Daughter of 2 lawyers, get everything in writing and don't sign anything unless you and your lawyer read it, are rules I live by. Fast forward to yesterday. He just started a new job. Celebrated the night before playing with some guys online. He had to wake up by 7 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. like usual, did all my stuff. By the time it was 7 a.m., he didn't wake up. I left the house at 8:15 a.m. and he was still asleep. When I got back, he was there and he was very angry. He started shouting and blamed me for being late, saying I should have woken him up when I noticed he overslept. All I did was stay silent until he stopped shouting, then showed him the paper he signed. And then I said, I never woke you up and I never will. You're an adult and you can set an alarm like the rest of us. Also, you being late is a you problem and I have no part in it at all. Now he says I'm the jerk and I should have known that the old rules do not apply since he no longer works for his friend that was lax with time. I still think I did nothing wrong. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It also sounds like you're in a bad relationship. This guy is 30 years old and unable to wake himself up for his new job, then blames his girlfriend even though it's his responsibility? Talk about a catch. And expected her to just know that she was meant to be waking him up like she's a mind reader. Guy furious, our store isn't in alphabetical order. I work at a big chain liquor store. It's huge. Last I heard, we sold about 30,000 different products. We sort our products by variety, obviously, but once you get to, for example, the Chardonnay aisle, it goes by price. A man came in who I didn't recognize until he started speaking. He proceeded to have a nearly identical conversation with me to the last time he was here. He asks for a certain type of wine. I say I'll look it up for him. He asks if the products are ordered alphabetically, something he must have worked out by the time he's wandering around and asking for assistance. He makes a big production of sighing, rolling his eyes and saying, "That's stupid," very emphatically. I spent years working at an independent grocery store where the prices were pretty expensive. I get so used to people saying stuff like, "This is ridiculous. I can get this for half the price at this other store." I developed a personal policy of not giving an inch. I'm not talking about people politely inquiring or criticizing, by the way. I'm talking about people who need me to know that they're super angry about things outside of my control. So when he's repeating, "It's stupid," I calmly say, "Oh, okay," and continue to search for his product. Obviously, this is not the reaction he wants, so he keeps going. "It's stupid. Why would they do that?" Eventually, I say, still calm, "Oh, I think you told me that last time." He says, "Then why didn't you change it?" I tell him it's not up to me, the same thing I told him last time. He tells me, can I pass on a message? I say I did, but unfortunately, I don't think it will change anything as these chains all follow the same layout. Of course I didn't. My boss would just stare at me if I took him aside to tell him a customer said the store was stupid and asked us to change it. He asked when the store manager would be in next, and he said he'd come talk to him. I can't imagine wasting your life like that. Sir, if you are out there, I can't possibly express how little I care what things you find stupid. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter I don't regret sending her away? So I, 46 female, was married and had 2 daughters. When Abby was 5 and Sarah was 8, my husband passed. It was awful and really affected the 2 girls, and after he passed, we went to family therapy for a long time. When Sarah was 13, I started to date again, and this is where the problem started. Sarah started to act out a lot, screaming, breaking things, and more. I kept my new boyfriend away and started Sarah in private therapy and therapy with me in the sessions. We stopped family therapy when she was 11. It didn't help and just kept getting worse and worse. It got to the point where I broke up with the boyfriend at the time since I thought it would help Sarah. It didn't get better and really affected the relationship between the 2 sisters. Abby started to resent Sarah for her actions. When Sarah was 15, she and her friends, she was not in a good crowd at school, snuck out of the house and stole a friend's parents' car. They were caught by one of the parents, and Sarah was in the driver's seat drunk. That was the last straw. I signed her up for teen rehab programs that deal with all types of issues. Since Sarah was considered a flight risk since she sneaks out of the house all the time, they picked her up in the middle of the night. She was in the program for 6 months, and during that time I sold the house and moved to a different state so all of us would have a fresh start. After Sarah got back from the program, she was a lot better. There was still work to do, but the whole family was able to get through it. Though the relationship between Sarah and Abby has never been close since. Today, Sarah is 22 and is back from college for spring break. Yesterday, we were looking at old family photos from our old house. Sarah was quiet for most of it and asked me if I regretted sending her to that program. I told her no. Sarah was shocked and started crying, saying that place was a nightmare that she has to work through to this day. I said, I know. I heard the extremely strict rules that place had before. She screams, if you knew it was horrible for me, then why don't you regret sending me there? And I told her she would have ended up in jail without it. She hasn't talked to me since, so am I the jerk? Edit. I was told this is relevant. No, she has told me nothing bad happened to her there. The program allowed each kid to have a flip phone 24/7 to call their parents at any time. I received many calls at all times of the day from her. The first week she was there, I received over 100 calls a day of her screaming at me. I even visited at random times to make sure everything was okay. No warning for the program, just showed up. The hardest part for Sarah, she said, was losing her freedom. There was a schedule she had to follow. Nothing would get her out of it. If she didn't help clean the kitchen, then she would be assigned that task until she did. Entitled Mom thinks our fresh milk is too expensive, wants to buy calf instead. After reading and listening to stories from this subreddit for over a year now, I have dreamed of the day I would encounter a Karen or entitled parent in the wild, never expecting it to ever happen. But today was the day, and boy, what an encounter it was. So for a little bit of background, my grandma works on a medium-sized dairy farm as kind of a manager, and I, 18 female, help her out from time to time. We have a thing called milk filling station. It's basically a vending machine where you can buy fresh milk from us, and it's €1 per liter. We're located on a hill a little outside a small village and surrounded by meadows and forests, so we do get some hikers or families on a nice walk from time to time, especially on the weekends, and they usually look at the calves and buy some milk. One shift here usually includes 4 people. Everyone has different jobs to fulfill, so most of the time you're alone just doing your task, and my job is essential for the milking process, as it includes bringing the cows to the milking station and back to their herds. And now on to the actual story. As I've mentioned, I'm alone most of the time, just doing my thing, running around inside the farm. It's a restricted area. We have signs up since it can be quite dangerous, but the gates are open to make work easier and for ventilation, so theoretically everyone could walk in. Still, I was kinda surprised when I, in the midst of literally shoveling cow dew, was met with a rather annoyed ahem behind me. I turned around, shovel still in hand, and saw a woman maybe in her mid-30s standing before me, way too overdressed to be seen anywhere near a farm. She also didn't look like she was on a casual walk with her family. At least I wouldn't do one in the high heels she was wearing. She was looking at me rather angrily, and I immediately knew that this probably was the day I'd been waiting for, although I never expected it to be here of all places. Before I could even so much as open my mouth, she already started speaking in a very condescending tone to me.
Finally, I've been looking for someone to help me for ages. Why are none of you doing your job and being there when you're needed?
I was instantly annoyed with this woman, because how dare she come in here and talk to me like that? And also, what job was she referring to? Because I, for one, was doing mine right at this moment, and it was strictly timed. I had to get stuff done with 0 time to listen to this lady. Still, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt and be nice. Sorry, if you're referring to the office in the front, there usually is no one since we're all in here doing our job. What's the problem? Maybe I can help. I thought that maybe she's had a flat tire or something around here and needed help, because I legitimately had no idea what someone dressed like her could want on a dairy farm. She just scoffed at me.
Huh? Unbelievable. You should be over there in case someone needs your help like I do. Anyways, your milk is too expensive.
Me. I'm sorry. What?
I said, your milk is too expensive. I want a better price.
She was saying every word slowly and loudly as if she thought I was disabled. Me. Oh, you're talking about the vending machine. I'm sorry, but that's a fixed price. I can't change that. And in my opinion, she cut me off.
I didn't ask for your opinion. It's way cheaper at the supermarket, but my daughter wanted to try fresh milk, so we drove here. You should match the price at the supermarkets, or you won't sell much.
Nee, ma'am, we're not a supermarket. We're selling the leftover fresh milk so it doesn't go to waste. She cuts me off again.
What? That's leftover milk? Ew! And to imagine my daughter could have drank that.
Now, for clarification, when I said leftover milk, I meant that it was fresh milk, as in barely out of the cow fresh, that we weren't able to sell to the company which collects our milk because they have fixed numbers, and if we produce more milk than those numbers, we would have to throw it away. But with the vending machine, at least some of it still gets sold. If you want fresher milk than that, you would have to milk the cow yourself right into the bottle. I started to try and explain this to the entitled mom, but she immediately cut me off again.
No, this is unacceptable. Neither me nor my child will drink old milk.
And then the dreaded sentence came.
I want to speak to your manager.
I already had enough of this BS, pun intended. And as I've already said, a strictly timed job that I had to get back to, because we were in the middle of milking our cows and this lady was literally holding up the whole process by holding up me. So I was more than happy to agree and get her to my manager, my grandma, and have her out of my hair. I just motioned for her to follow me and speed walked in the direction of the front office, while the lady was trying to keep up in her high heels without breaking her ankles. Now, our office is in kind of another building and the door closest to us was locked. So we had to walk around the building, across the parking lot for the workers, and through another entrance that happened to be right beside the boxes we kept the newborn calves in. This also was the place where I met the before-mentioned daughter of entitled mom. The girl was maybe 10 years old and happily watching the calves and petting them when we came into view. As soon as she saw her mom, she ran to her and started excitingly jumping up and down. Entitled girl. Mom, look at the cute calves. She dragged her mom over to the boxes. Entitled girl. Look, it's so cute. I named her Emma. Can we keep her, please? I expected the entitled mom to maybe say something along the lines of, a cow is not a pet, or we don't have the space, or maybe I don't know how to take care of a cow. But boy, was I wrong. Instead, the mom turns to me and asks completely serious,
how much are these?
Now, although we do sell our male calves since they are of no use to us, I for one wasn't sure how much exactly this calf was worth. Pretty sure that there was a registration process involved in owning a cow and in no way, shape, or form authorized to just sell a calf like that. And on top of that, cows aren't exactly animals you can just put in your yard and be done with. Me. I'm sorry, but I was cut off again.
No, I asked how much it is. Tell me.
Me. Ma'am, that's a cow, not a pet.
I know, but your milk is way too expensive anyways. Just sell me one of those if my daughter wants it, and we will have our own, really fresh milk.
At this point, I strongly considered just walking away because there was no way this woman could be serious. She wanted to buy an animal that would grow up to be huge, heavy, and strong enough to hurt you if you handled them wrong. Not only that, but also a cow of a breed that needs to be milked twice a day because it produces as much milk as possible, which is around 30 to 50 liters at our farm. All that because €1 per liter for fresh milk apparently was too much, and her daughter thought our calves were cute. They are, but that's not the point. Plus, you need to properly take care of them, feed them right, and just getting a calf won't give you instant milk. She has to grow up, get pregnant, give birth, etc. All around, this entitled mom would have to wait another 24 to 28 months until her calf starts giving milk, and then repeat the process every year, so she would have new calves to take care of every year just to keep her one cow running, so to speak. Instead of telling her directly how stupid, time and money consuming this idea is, I decided to try and take the more diplomatic way. Me. Ma'am, I understand, but it's not that easy. I'm afraid I'm not able.
Then get me someone who's able. I want to speak to your manager anyways. Why do you have to be such an incompetent worker? How old are you? 15? Kids shouldn't talk back to adults.
That's where I had it. And so I just blurted out the best thing I could think of at the time. Me. I am an adult, and you should stop talking to me like that. I'm not obligated to help you, and in fact, we could sue you for trespassing on private property.
How dare you threaten me? Young lady, that is no way to talk to a person older than you. Learn some respect. I demand to speak to your manager. I will get you fired for this.
As if she was called, my grandma stepped out of the building right at that moment, probably because she heard the commotion. Grandma, what's going on here? Entitled Mom.
Oh, good. Are you the manager of this place?
Grandma, at the moment, yes. How can I help you? Entitled Mom.
This worker of yours was incredibly rude. She threatened me and my daughter and refused to help us. She even tried to assault me right before you came outside. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been on time.
Entitled Mom was trying to squeeze some fake tears out at this point, quickly swiping them away with her finger before they could ruin her very thick layer of makeup. Entitled Mom.
All we wanted was to ask if we could get the milk you are selling a little cheaper. And my daughter here really likes this calf over there, so we thought about buying it.
My grandma was just silently listening to this woman's story, arms crossed and an eyebrow raised, because she could smell the BS from 3 miles away. Grandma. Ma'am, this is my granddaughter you're talking about, and I know for a fact that she wouldn't do any of that. Entitled Mom went awfully quiet at that. Grandma. So, about the milk. I maybe would have helped you out if you hadn't just lied to my face, but now I kindly ask you to just pay the full price as everyone else does. And the calf, I'm afraid I won't be able to sell it to you. Entitled Mom.
This is outrageous. I'm a paying customer. I would pay for this calf. Why are you refusing? My daughter wants a cow, and she likes this one there.
Entitled Girl. Her name is Emma. Grandma. Ma'am, that won't give you a cow. It will give you a bull. It's a male calf. Entitled Mom.
You're lying. You just don't want to sell it because it's pretty.
My grandma just silently pointed to the big male symbol on the side of the box, clearly labeling it as a boy. At this point, the entitled mom just huffed and mumbled something about stupid, uneducated people from the countryside and how she would never come back here again, which I would also really appreciate. The entitled girl was whining loudly about her Emma, while her mom was dragging her back to their expensive-looking car, and my grandma and I watched them drive away before having a good laugh about the whole story. Karen ruined my son's car. I'm pressing charges. I'm 39, male, and my son, 17, Bryce, dated our neighbor Lana, who's 17, for a year. They broke up mid-January for reasons I don't know. I won't sugarcoat this. I never liked Lana. She always seemed a little unhinged, controlling and aggressive. She's always demanding Bryce's attention, and there were quite a few times when she showed up to our house out of nowhere, whether it was 7 a.m. or 11 p.m., because Bryce wasn't answering his phone, screaming and calling him a cheater when it wasn't even like that. The thought of our son being mistreated by his girlfriend made us worry so much. My wife and I tried to talk him out of that relationship. We said how it wasn't normal nor healthy. We didn't want to force the breakup because we feared Lana would lash out to him, so we tried to do it in a sneaky way. We don't know if it worked, but they ended up breaking up. He said that after he broke up with her, Lana didn't contact him, which was weird because he was expecting her to go nuts. But I told him that if fate didn't care, he better not tease it. Now, the problem is that we bought my son a car for Christmas. Nothing fancy, but enough to get him to school, his job, and eventually college. He parks it in our driveway outside our home. Ever since the month began, we had been finding scratches all over the car. We knew Lana was doing it, but since it was minimal, my son decided not to do anything, even if we could prove that it was her. We have cameras. Still, something smelled bad for me, so I decided to switch one of the cameras facing his car directly, just in case. Well, 2 weeks ago, we got up and found my son's car covered in a lot of crap. Paint, glue, feathers, confetti. The door handles were wrecked. Flat tires, paint all over the windows. You get the picture. Bryce and my wife were so distraught. We called the police, and I handed them the security camera footage that showed Lana and her brother, 23 male, destroying my son's car. We pressed charges, and needless to say, Lana's brother went straight to jail. But since she's still a minor, her parents want to make a deal, but I refused. I don't think she should get a way out. Before the police were here, she was laughing her face off, and she tried to play it cool. If she thought this was funny, then she's old enough to face the consequences. My wife and I plan to stand our ground. They said they'll buy my son a better car and put Lana on therapy, but it is not enough. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is the wake-up call that she needs. This is also the wake-up call that her brother and her parents need. I can't picture my very much adult brothers helping me wreck my ex's car just because I'm bitter. They'd rather snitch to my parents and help me avoid getting time in jail than being the cool bro. Not the jerk. I could see the older brothers going along with it if she lied to them about why she was doing it. Revenge for cheating, for example. I can see that. She seems like the type to make up a crazy story so her brother would help her get her revenge. Well, what do you think? Should OP press charges on Lana or not? Please let us know.
I'd let it go as long as they buy my son a DeLorean.
Am I the jerk for not letting my homeless brother live with me? I'm adopted, but my brother and sister are the biological kids. I've had some issues in my teenage years, and I wasn't the perfect kid, but my brother was a bit wild too. However, since I'm the adopted one, my siblings have always given me extra crap for my failings. A few years ago, Dad got sick, so I moved home to help him and Mom out. I contributed to bills, took care of Dad, took care of the dogs, cooked every day, cleaned, and worked full-time myself, and just really tried to be as helpful as possible. I even offered to pay rent, but my mom said no. Cut to me having a car accident, going to pick up Dad's meds, and Dad and Mom buying me a used car so I could keep taking Dad to appointments and as a thank you for all the help. Well, my siblings came for that Christmas, heard about the car, and freaked out. They said I didn't deserve anything and that I was using Mom and Dad. My brother cornered me and said as soon as Dad passed, I had a month to move out and stop leeching off of Mom, or else. Dad passed shortly after that Christmas, and I began planning my move, and Mom was really upset. She kept pushing for me to stay, but in the back of my head, I had my brother's threat and just didn't feel comfortable staying. I ended up getting a place just up the street so I could still help her. After I moved, I ended up getting really lucky financially. I was, within a year of renting, able to buy a house near Mom and have been doing well for myself. Last year, my mom's sister, who was also recently widowed, came to live with her and brought her 2 grandkids she is the guardian of, so my mom's house is full and she's happy. I help out and watch the kids a lot and still do most of the house maintenance stuff, so I'm over a lot. On one of my visits, my mom and aunt were discussing what to do because my brother needed to move home since his wife kicked him out. I offered to get the kids bunk beds and help move them into one room, and my mom was very grateful. A week later, my brother called asking if he could just live with me since he didn't want to share a house with 2 kids. I have a spare room, but I don't want to live with him. He's treated me like crap for over 10 years at this point and never has a nice thing to say, behind my back usually, from my teenage years when I was struggling. He's vocal about not considering me family. He said he doesn't even want me at our mom's funeral or in her will. I don't want anything from her and never ask for anything. She just offers things sometimes. The animosity is palpable. I would offer to take in one of the kids, but they're young and need to be with their caretaker, so I think he just needs to suck it up and stay at my mom's. My mom knows how he is to me and would never ask me to take him in, but my aunt is confused why I wouldn't offer that, as it makes sense and another person in my mom's house will make it cramped. Some friends are saying that after all my mom has done for me, I should suck it up and let her son, my brother, stay with me, but I really don't want to. Does that make me the jerk? Not the jerk. He's incredibly cruel to you. Time for him to reap what he sowed. Tell your aunt why you won't let him stay, and she will no longer be confused. This seems like a straightforward, not the jerk situation. You know you aren't. He treats you like crap, and as far as he's concerned, he's not even your family. What do you owe him? He can sleep on a curb. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let your brother live with you or not? Please let us know.
I'd help him find a used tent on eBay.
I left the restaurant after my boyfriend started drinking his juice with 3 straws. Might not seem like a huge deal, but here's some context. I, female 30, have been with my boyfriend, male 32, for a few months. Unlike him, I come from a well-off background, and last week I invited him out to an upscale restaurant for a dinner together. We got there, sat down at our table, and chatted for some time. He ordered some orange juice, then asked the waitress to bring him 2 more straws besides the one he had with the juice. I was puzzled. I asked if he was expecting one of his friends, and he laughed and said, "Oh no, not after what they did to me last night." I was like, "What?" but watched to see what he was doing. The waitress came back with the 2 straws, then took our orders. The minute she walked away, my boyfriend put the other 2 straws in his juice and basically started sipping with the 3 straws, making an unbelievably absurd and annoying sound. I was floored. I asked what he was doing and why. He nonchalantly smiled and said he could drink it faster this way. I got mad and quite embarrassed because people were literally side-eyeing me since I'm a regular. I told him to stop, but he didn't. I said that I'd leave if he wouldn't, and he made eye contact and kept sipping. I had it. I said I wasn't going to continue to be humiliated any longer and grabbed my stuff and made my way out. He shouted for me to wait, but I didn't. 30 minutes later, he started rage texting me about how I overreacted and how I keep ruining good times worrying about what those snobs think. Then talked about how ridiculous I was to walk out like that and repeatedly texted about how I should just stop being a pretentious snob just because I hang around them, which I find really offensive. He expected me to apologize for making a scene and walking out like that over something so stupid and harmless. Not the jerk. What he was doing was obnoxious and you asked him to stop. He refused. You told him what the consequences would be if he continued, and he apparently accepted them until you followed through. Dump him and find an adult to date. If the boyfriend wants to look obnoxious and draw attention by making noises, he can do that at home. Instead, he deliberately made a scene and refused to stop even after being told not to. It's asking the bare minimum at an upscale restaurant to have basic table manners, not snobbery. Agreed, not the jerk. OP, don't think that you're exempt from his lumping you in with the other pretentious snobs. He's already told you what he thinks of you and is now expecting you to lower your etiquette standards so he can freely act like a kid. His plan is to mooch off of you while simultaneously shaming you for being better off than him. Am I the jerk for taking my mother's side over my wife's over childcare and future plans? My wife and I have 3 kids between the ages of 2 and 8. I also have 3 other siblings who have kids as well. My parents love being grandparents, but are really busy. My mom is currently the president of a fiber arts guild in her local area and travels a lot to shows, conferences, and visits other guilds in their national network. She's also flown around and asked to teach classes even internationally and got a diploma from people who do embroidery for the Queen of England, literally. Growing up, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, but after we grew up, she got really involved with her crafts. And my dad, who is retired, is super supportive and travels with her to these conferences and was her campaign manager when she went for president. His reasoning is that she supported his career all those years, so now it's his turn to take on the support role, so he travels with her and jokes that he's her secretary now. My mom recently expressed wanting to get her bachelor's degree in this particular field, and the course is only taught in the UK. We are in another part of Europe. So my dad and mom want to move to London for 3 years using the money they got from downsizing the family home. My siblings and I are a bit disappointed that we won't have our parents around as much, but we also understand how much our mom has given up to raise us and how much she loves her crafts. The problem for my wife and I is that my parents were a huge source of childcare for us during the times they were free. My parents live in a different country, and so they can't be as involved as they like. My nieces and nephews have another set of grandparents who are hands-on. My wife feels that it's unfair of my parents to move to London like this when our kids are young and need their grandparents the most for a degree that my mom doesn't need to use because she already teaches classes and she's president of a guild. So getting a bachelor's won't actually help in any way, and my parents are just draining the money they got from the sale of our family home. She expressed this to my mom last Saturday over dinner, and my mom is now hurt and wavering on her decision. My siblings are furious at my wife, and we ended up leaving the dinner because while things didn't turn into a shouting match, my wife was basically told she had no say in this because it wasn't her mom and she wasn't family. I thought that was a harsh thing to say to my wife, but I also think our issues shouldn't be factored in my mom pursuing her dreams. My wife basically told her that being a grandmother should be the most important thing in her life. Now my wife is angry with me for not backing her up when my siblings told her to butt out, and for agreeing that my parents should go to London for 3 years even though it's going to make things harder for us. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your wife is really entitled. Grandparents are great if they can provide childcare, but they shouldn't be made to feel guilty for enjoying their own life. Getting childcare is you and your wife's responsibility, not your parents'. Your mom deserves to do what makes her happy to without the guilt. Edit. Also, my not the jerk was about him supporting the mother. OP is now arguing and name-calling in the comments for people agreeing with his decision, which is bizarre and seriously misplaced. He's also the jerk for that. Not the jerk. Your wife gets no say in this. Neither do you or your siblings. Your mother makes her own choices. Kids don't need their grandparents. Grandparents are a luxury. Your wife is just mad about losing access to all the free childcare. Not the jerk. 1. You and your wife are not entitled to your parents' time. 2. Your wife should have discussed this thoroughly with you in private first, so you had a shared plan before talking to your mom. 3. Because she didn't do number 2, you got caught between supporting your wife or supporting the right decision. That's your wife's fault. So none of this is your fault. You're not the jerk.
You can't move away and enjoy your life. We need to use you to watch our kids. Gotta love these Karens.
Unknown number accused me of being a thief. So here's the story. It's 3:08 in the morning. I get a call from an unknown number. I answer and the person started screaming at me. I automatically hang up on them because being 17 and suddenly being screamed at over the phone really does something to you. Not even 6 minutes later, I get these texts. We've got them, the jerk, and we've got me, Jace. Jerk.
Hello? Why did you hang up?
Me. Who is this? Why are you calling me at such a late hour?
This is the boss of the store you work at.
Me. Dude, I'm only 17. I don't have a job yet. Please stop harassing me. I didn't get a response after that. So 6:02 rolls around and I'm still in bed trying to rest from being woken up so early. I get 21 missed calls from the same number threatening me, saying they're going to tell corporate that I'm stealing money and food out of the store and they will have me fired. Then they threaten to call the police and have me arrested for stealing over $300 from the cash register. I do not work yet. I text the number and the following conversation goes. Me. Will you please stop texting and calling me? I do not work for your company. I do not work at all. I'm 17 and I'm still trying to finish high school. Jerk.
Don't lie to me. I know you work for us, or else I wouldn't have your number.
Me. Maybe the employee you hired gave you a false number. This is a private number.
Don't lie to me, Jim.
Me. My name is not Jim. I do not work for you. Leave me alone before I report you to the police for harassment. They proceeded to call me 10 more times before giving up. I went online and filed a report on the number. Turns out that the number wasn't even real. It was coming from an app that could be easily erased. What kind of sicko does this stuff? I would show the screenshots, but I deleted the messages because I was sick of looking at them. Am I the jerk for insisting that my husband drives my mother-in-law to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance? My mother-in-law was at our house a couple days ago to see some new furniture I bought. She fainted and fell off on her back. My husband freaked out and went straight to call an ambulance. I told him that he should drive her to the hospital himself since his car was working instead of paying X amount of money for an ambulance. He said no and insisted on an ambulance. I tried to convince him since the hospital wasn't far, but he blew up at me and said that his hands were shaking and he couldn't drive her there. He yelled at me to move out of the way and called her an ambulance. I decided to step back, but I was pretty mad. He went with her and got back in the evening. He started going off on me about how I behaved while his mom was injured. I replied that there was no need to waste money on an ambulance ride, especially since mother-in-law was conscious and also since we had his car and he could have driven her there himself. He lashed out, saying that he was in no state to drive and that I was ridiculous to care about how much an ambulance ride cost instead of his mom's health. I told him it's my house too, and he should get my input on whether to call an ambulance or not. Besides that, we have a policy to only call ambulances for the people who live in the house, not visitors. He said I was mistaken for getting in his face and insisting there was no need for an ambulance. He's been sulking, claiming that I don't care about his mom's well-being and I only care about money, and he's refusing to let it go. Am I the jerk? This is one of the dumbest things I've read on Reddit, and that's saying a lot. You actually have a policy to only call an ambulance for the people who live in your house, but not for visitors? Could you be any more of a jerk? Who actually plans for emergencies ahead of time in regards to who you will call an ambulance for? Sorry you fell and broke your hip, Grandma, Walk it off and rub some dirt on it, then get in the car because you don't live here. Yes, you're the jerk. A huge one. Besides, you know who pays for the ambulance ride? The person who needs to be transported, not the person whose house they come to. You're the jerk, OP. I know, right? She acts like she's the one who's going to have to pay for it. What a jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Customer orders large amount of material, goes somewhere else without canceling to save a few bucks. This happened a while ago. I work as a delivery driver for a building supply store. I have one of the highest driver's licenses and a crane operator certification, so I was the only one who could do this delivery. The customer had ordered a large amount of material one week with a request for it to be delivered the first of the next week. Some of the stuff he wanted we didn't have, so it had to get ordered in. The weekend before the delivery, I had gathered all the material and separated it into different piles because it was going to 2 different floors of a house, and to also make it easier for my crane to handle safely. I spent probably over an hour properly organizing and collecting the order. The Monday comes and order said to call before going. So I give the customer a call and he goes, "Oh, I didn't want it ordered, I just wanted it quoted." I was annoyed, thinking a store worker who took the order messed up. So after I was finished talking to the customer, I looked at the order to see who made it. That's when things began to get odd. The person who did the order is not one to make a mistake like that. Unfortunately, they were off that day, so I had to wait until the next day to talk to them. The next day they come in and tell them what happened. The worker was mad, saying things I really can't put here. But short story, they were extremely mad at the customer, saying, "I know the difference between the words quote and order," and they asked for it to be delivered. So they phoned the customer, and I heard later on when things came to light, they really let the customer have it. Apparently he did order it, but after he ordered it, he went somewhere else, and this other place offered him 5 cents per each individual piece of material cheaper than we were. I did the math. For everything he ordered, he saved himself $6, and for whatever reason, he felt it was better to pretend that we misheard and say he wanted a quote rather than just calling and canceling his order. And apparently, this was the second time this customer had done something like that. They said they were flagging his account. That way, they know if he orders again to not do anything until there is a guarantee he wants it. I suggested he should be charged a non-refundable fee of $20 whenever he orders, or a restocking fee, but nothing ever came of that. Am I the jerk for stating I will not financially provide for my sister-in-law after my mother-in-law passes away? My sister-in-law is the oldest of 4 siblings, but lives at home with mother-in-law still paying a lot of sister-in-law's bills. Sister-in-law is 60 years old, works full-time, doesn't have to pay food or rent, and still borrows money from one sibling every 2 weeks. She no longer requests money from us, but that's a different story. Sister-in-law makes more money than I do. She just blows through it as soon as she can get her hands on it. My mother-in-law told me that my husband will agree to support sister-in-law after mother-in-law is gone because that's what family does. I said absolutely not. It isn't our job to pay her way so she can get her nails done every 2 weeks and eat at restaurants 2 times a day, plus travel to an expensive theme park to spend time with her grandbabies. Grandbabies live in the same town. Travel isn't required to see them. My mother-in-law has decreed that I am a selfish jerk because I would not agree to take care of a woman 15 years my senior. If she were disabled or legitimately unable to work, I'd be fine paying the monthly power bill or buying her groceries. The only reason we have money and a nice house is because we don't blow money. Am I the jerk for saying no to this plan? My husband agrees he will not support sister-in-law just so she can spend her money to do fun stuff. The conflict it is causing is between me and mother-in-law because I'm vocal about saying no. It's causing conflict in his family because we have money, and somehow that means we should be responsible. Not the jerk. Time for your husband to set boundaries with your mother-in-law. OP. She wouldn't listen. She just says I'm making him say all these things. I don't visit anymore because I'm tired of hearing it. Not the jerk. If sister-in-law has grandbabies, why isn't mother-in-law pressuring sister-in-law's kids to take care of her? Not that I think that's the right answer either, but it's interesting that mother-in-law thinks it's your husband's job to take care of her instead of, sister-in-law's family, if family is so important. Karen's sister acts like she's pregnant even though she's not. I, 35, female, am pregnant with my sister's 30 female child. My sister has some fertility issues and is not able to have a safe pregnancy. I offered to carry the baby for her and her husband. I'm now currently 6.5 months along and everything is going well. Once we found out I was pregnant, my sister made the decision to live like she herself is the one who was pregnant. I found it odd, but I didn't see an issue with it. I understood that she's going through an emotional time. I mainly thought this was going to be something just between her and her husband. I was wrong, and she's begun to act pregnant in her daily life. At first, it was just small things, like having her husband run out to get her food she was craving, but it developed into things like wearing maternity wear. She also gets annoyed if I talk about my cravings or pregnancy symptoms around her. These things don't bother me much, and I just think my sister wants to feel involved. Today, my sister wanted to go shopping to look at baby things since the stores have reopened in our area. The day started with her getting angry whenever sales staff would talk to me. I would explain to the salesperson that my sister is the mother whenever it was needed. After a few stores, we arrived at a baby retailer where she wanted to make a baby registry. By this point, I was extremely tired and wanted to go home. I had told my sister this, and she promised this would be the last store. I must have looked exhausted because as we were waiting, the salesperson brought over a chair for me to sit in while the registry paperwork was done. When she brought it over, she did say something like, "Here's a chair for mom." I didn't correct the salesperson this time and just sat down. My sister told me to get up and give her the chair after I had sat down. I asked her why and tried explaining that I was tired. My sister berated me by saying that the salesperson said the chair was for the mom and that she was supposed to sit. She said that this was her registry appointment and how dare I act like this was all about me. She said she was the one who was the expectant mother and that she needed to sit down now. I told my sister that yes, she is going to be the mother, but I am the one that is currently pregnant. I snapped at her that she is not actually pregnant and does not get how exhausting it can be. I told her I'm trying my best to appease her, but she's being ridiculous. My sister began to cry, saying that I was shaming her for not being able to get pregnant and that I was making fun of her. I tried to defend myself and tell her that's not what I meant. She wouldn't listen and ran out of the store. Everyone in the store was staring at us. They were looking at me like I was a complete monster after hearing what my sister said. My mother said that I should have just let my sister have the seat. I know this whole thing must seem so small and stupid because it's about a chair. I don't know if I am the jerk in this situation or not. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.